Waking up after a long slumber, I found myself transmigrated into the body of a scumbag who specialized in tormenting his own sister. I realized that the original owner of this body spent every waking moment either gambling his life away or ruthlessly beating his adopted younger sister. Looking at the girl, her fragile body covered in scars and bruises, less than greater than. I decided that I would bear the weight of this villainous reputation. Less than greater than. This person. I will save her, no matter what. Less than greater than. Before I could even gather my wits, less than greater than. The eerie sound of a knife being sharpened echoed in my ears. I grew up in an orphanage since I was a child, just a lonely laborer living a life of drudgery. There was absolutely no one else supposed to be in my home. That sound. It really was someone sharpening a blade. I tried to struggle, but my body and my thoughts were as sluggish as rusted gears. Then the scraping sound abruptly ceased, followed immediately by the sound of running water. Gritting my teeth, I forced my heavy eyelids open with all my might. A sudden, harsh light pierced my pupils, bringing an instant, sharp sting. A few seconds later, my vision finally came into focus, yet the sight before me left me utterly bewildered. This was definitely not my rented room. I was lying in an unfamiliar living room, dilapidated and cramped, with empty beer cans scattered everywhere across the floor. Everything was decaying. Next to the sofa, a few flies buzzed around a half-eaten bowl of spoiled porridge, circling it in a chaotic swarm. I massaged my throbbing temples with force, suppressing the agony that felt like a hot iron piercing my skull, and struggled to crawl up from the ground. As I took my first step, my toe kicked an empty liquor bottle, sending it rolling across the broken wooden floor. Finally, it bumped into a pair of old plastic slippers with frayed edges. Following the gaze up from the thin, pale ankles bit by bit, I suddenly met the eyes of a young girl. She was wearing a worn white dress riddled with holes and stains. Her messy hair veiled more than half of her face, but the eyes peering through possessed not a single spark of human vitality. A second later, I watched in horror as her hand, hanging limply by her side, clutched a kitchen knife that had just been sharpened to a lethal edge. Under the dim, yellow light, the blade reflected a chilling gleam that made my blood run cold. In that split second of mortal danger, a massive explosion seemed to go off in my head, as countless memories that didn't belong to me swept into my mind as violently as a torrential flood. I groaned and collapsed against the back of a chair. Never in a million years did I expect that I would actually transmigrate into another body. The owner of this body was also named Mu-ji. He had just turned 22 this year. But compared to my past life as a gentle office worker, the current me was an irredeemable piece of trash. A true villain. At 15, his parents died in a car accident, and without any guidance, the original owner fell into total depravity. Not only did he spend his days carousing with thugs, he even cornered the class beauty in the girl's restroom to assault her, which led to his immediate expulsion from school. From that day forward, he lived a life of idleness, refusing to work a single day. His daily routine consisted of only 3 things: gambling, drinking, and brutally beating his younger sister. Yes, the girl holding the kitchen knife standing before me right now was my only younger sister. This girl's name was Ya Qingyan. She was my sister in name, though we shared not a single drop of blood. When she was 9, her mother left behind a large sum of money and placed her in my family's care, before vanishing from the face of the earth forever. The original Mu-ji had hated her from the start, feeling she stole the affection his parents should have given only to him, so he tormented and abused her every single day. However, after their parents died in that car crash, this household spiraled completely out of control. The original Mu-ji didn't just call her a jinx, he even blamed her entirely for their parents' deaths, finding new ways to torture her with each passing day. Before, their parents could still protect her, and though life was hard, there was a glimmer of hope. Once they were gone, she fell straight from the world of the living into a living hell. In this house over the past few years, she wasn't even treated as a human being. Not only did she have to handle all the cooking and cleaning, she also became a punching bag for his rage. He beat her when he lost gambling, beat her when he was drunk, and beat her just because he was unhappy. And because she was beautiful, the original owner harbored even more disgusting intentions, sneaking to her bedroom door several times in the middle of the night only to be driven back by her wielding a pair of scissors. As I pieced together these fragments of memory, less than greater than, I couldn't help but curse inwardly. Less than greater than. Calling him a scumbag, less than greater than, was far too kind an assessment. Less than greater than. Staring at the knife in her hands, less than greater than, a lump formed in my throat. Less than greater than. She had always endured in silence, hardly daring to breathe loudly in this house, yet here she was holding a weapon. My mind raced frantically. What would the original Mu-ji do in this situation? Would he yell at her for staring, or would he simply start beating her without a single word? No, I am not that man. Just she spoke. You're awake? Her voice was clear but chilling, devoid of any warmth. I looked into her melancholy eyes and tried to remain calm. Yes, I'm awake, my voice is raspy as sandpaper. To say I wasn't afraid of someone holding a knife would be a lie, so I struggled to keep my breathing steady. Yet her body began to tremble slightly as she muttered under her breath, "Why? How can this be happening?" She was disappointed. Before I could process, my stomach suddenly lurched violently, and the stench of alcohol surged up my throat. My expression twisted, and I bolted toward the bathroom. She was standing right in my way, and I barked out 2 words, "Move out." She froze in place, so I shouldered her aside, shoving her out of the way. I kicked the scattered liquor bottles aside, and the next second I was hunched over the toilet, vomiting uncontrollably. Behind me, there was a sudden clatter as the kitchen knife hit the floor. She looked down at the cold steel on the ground, her fingertips icy. Why is he still alive after all that? I had clearly prepared everything, even researched how to dispose of the body, so why did he have to wake up? She was breaking down inside. Now that I'm awake, she won't have another chance. Even with a knife, she is no match for me. Exhausted from vomiting, I finally managed to regain some strength. My stomach was empty, but my mind felt significantly clearer. I turned on the tap to rinse my mouth and looked up into the mirror, only to freeze in disbelief the next second. The reflection in the mirror looked exactly like my physical form from my past life. Even the tiny mole at the corner of my right eye was in the exact same spot. However, this body was more robust with more defined muscular lines. Not at all as frail as I was in my previous existence. It made sense, I suppose, considering this man spent his life fighting. What a terrible start, I sighed to myself. Remembering Yak Xingyan was still outside, I looked away from the mirror and stepped out of the bathroom. She was still standing there, frozen, her eyes hollow, like a puppet that had its soul ripped away. I looked at the gleaming knife on the floor, asked with a frown, "What are you doing with that knife?" She was in a daze, calculating how best to dismember me and dump the pieces in a nearby pig farm. Pigs are scavengers. They could devour every scrap of flesh in a single night, leaving only bone. Besides, I have no relatives left in this city, so no one would care if I went missing. That pig farm is an illegal operation, so even if they found bones, they wouldn't dare call the police. At that moment, a voice pulled her back to reality. "Hey, what are you daydreaming about?" She snapped out of it with a jolt and answered tremulously. I was peeling fruit. I glanced skeptically toward the kitchen, but didn't see any fruit at all. Panic immediately seized her, and she bowed her head low. I misspoke. I was slicing potatoes and noticed the knife was dull, so I sharpened it. I was going to press her further, but my stomach began to churn with hunger, burning with a fierce, searing pain. Forget it, I thought, stepping toward the dining table, less than greater than. Only to accidentally kick an empty liquor bottle. Less than greater than. What a nuisance, I muttered irritably. Less than greater than. At my words, Ya Qingyan flinched violently. Less than greater than, as if a switch had been flipped. She instantly straightened her back, tense with fear, and apologized profusely. "I'm sorry, I'll clean it up right now." Her earlier composure had vanished, replaced by absolute terror. She scrambled to find a tattered cardboard box, and knelt down to pick up the scattered bottles, her long hair dragging across the floor with every movement. While cleaning, she accidentally pinned her own hair down, tearing out a large clump. She let out a faint whimper, but immediately bit her lip, not daring to make another sound. I looked at her hunched back as she crawled on the ground, and my heart constricted. I tried to soften my voice as much as I could. "Leave it. I'll do it." To my surprise, she moved even faster than before. Her heart was filled with fear and pain. She thought this was just the prelude to some cruel, twisted game. I knelt down to grab her arm and make her stop. She let out a sharp, short scream. Like a terrified bird, she violently threw off my hand, dropped the box, and frantically scrambled back until she had curled herself to the narrow corner between the refrigerator and the wall. She huddled there, clutching the hem of her faded shirt, less than greater than, her entire body shaking. "I'm sorry, less than greater than. I'll really clean it all up, less than greater than. Please don't hit me, less than greater than. I'll finish cleaning right away, less than greater than." Begging for mercy had become her Pavlovian response because the old moo geese sometimes found her pleas amusing. Taunting her would occasionally save her from a few physical blows. Moo gee's fists were heavy and painful. Escaping even one was a small victory for her. I stood there paralyzed, watching her try to make herself as small as possible, like a wounded kitten. Hiding in the shadows, trembling with fright, my nose stung with unshed tears. In my past life, I was an orphan, no family, no one to love me. Difficult life indeed, but at least I was never tortured like this. But this girl before me, her life was worse than that of the most withdrawn child in the orphanage. The horror and profound emptiness in her eyes even showed signs of an imminent psychological collapse. For a long time, I couldn't utter a single word. In the shadows, Ya Qingyan closed her eyes tight, letting silent tears stream down her face, while her heart screamed in agony. Why won't this scumbag just die? Why must I be kept in this hell? I slowly stood up, stepped back a few paces, and sat down at the dining table, hoping the distance would feel a little safer. Yet Ya Qingyan intentionally exposed her back to me. She thought that injuries there would be hard to treat, but if her hands were injured, it would interfere with her work, making things even worse. When the expected blow didn't fall, she stopped crying in confusion, finding my behavior today utterly bizarre. But not being beaten was a good thing regardless, so she timidly finished gathering the bottles, pushed the cardboard box into the corner, and huddled back into the shadows by the fridge, still as a statue. Seeing that she had calmed down slightly, finally spoke. "Stand up." As soon as those words left my mouth, Ya Qingyan's trembling intensified. She remembered that Mugi would sometimes act gentle out of nowhere, but as soon as she complied, that scumbag would immediately turn on her, sneering. "You actually dared. Couldn't you tell I was being sarcastic?" Then would come a brutal lashing. He seemed to savor dangling hope before her, only to crush it like a game. The cost of choosing wrong was too high. She had made too many mistakes before, so without hesitation she stayed entrenched in her corner. Seeing her reaction, I suddenly understood the problem. I slammed my hand onto the table, raising my voice and adopting the original owner's trademark aggression. "Less than greater than. I told you to stand up. Are you deaf? Less than greater than." Sure enough, Ya Qingyan scrambled to her feet. Less than greater than. Her hair still veiling most of her face. I sighed internally. It seemed this was the only way to get through to her. My gaze fell upon the bowl of porridge, foul-smelling half-bowl of white gruel sitting before me. The gnawing hunger drove me to pick it up. The girl stood silent in the darkness, watching me through the strands of her hair. Seeing me lift the bowl, she anxiously intertwined her fingers. I was starving to death, and as I looked at the white porridge, I didn't care even if flies had crawled over it. Back in the orphanage, I'd eaten rotten apples from the trash. This was nothing. I picked up the chopsticks. Ya Qingyan stood off to the side like a servant, her hands hanging at her side, which made me feel incredibly uneasy. Trying to mimic the original owner's tone, less than greater than, I barked out, "It's late. Less than greater than. Go to bed. Less than greater than." Before I could even finish, less than greater than, Ya Qingyan collapsed onto the floor with a thud. Less than greater than. She was shaking like a leaf in a gale, her voice trembling. "Hit me, please. Just hit me. I beg you, hit me." My mind short-circuited. What kind of reaction was that? What is going on? When I didn't move, she began to cry with utter despair, pleading hopelessly. "What you're doing is illegal. Please, just hit me. Just hit me." Being beaten had somehow become her only lifeline in this moment. My throat tightened, and I struggled even to swallow my own saliva. "Original Muga, what kind of sins did you commit to drive a living soul to such a state? You truly deserve to die." However, my swallowing was misinterpreted by her. She scrambled away on all fours, trying to put more distance between us. I slammed the table again. I had to use the method most consistent with my character's persona to break the deadlock. "Get back to your room. Don't stand there being an eyesore. You're interrupting my meal. Do you want me to give you a real reason to cry?" The command worked. Ya Qingyan's stiff shoulders immediately relaxed. Keeping her head down, she scrambled off the floor and fled to her room. I looked around the empty living room, a wave of overwhelming guilt washing over me. I had just breathed a sigh of relief, aware that on the other side of the door, Ya Qingyan was watching me intently through a crack. She had just personally tried to send me to my grave. Fearing the dose wasn't enough, she had mixed all sorts of things into that porridge. Rat poison, sleeping pills, even cockroach killer. The porridge was as thick as paste, and its color was unnatural. Luckily, Muga had been drinking beforehand, so in his stupor, he hadn't noticed. She had even checked. He was definitely not breathing back then. So how was I back to life? Could it have been just a temporary coma? The resilience of this scumbag was truly terrifying. Just then, I once again picked up that lethal bowl of porridge, and Ya Qingyan's heart leaped into her throat. I hadn't died after eating half of it earlier. Would the remaining half do the trick? But if I discovered she had poisoned it, wouldn't her life become worse than death? Terror overrode everything else. She suddenly burst through her door. Just as the porridge was about to touch my lips, she snatched the bowl away, and along with a half plate of shredded potatoes, dumped it all into the trash. "What are you doing?" I was stunned. My empty stomach let out a roar of protest, causing Ya Qingyan to retreat immediately into her corner by the fridge. She curled up into a ball, trembling. She wanted to ask herself, too, why had she lost the courage to poison me to death? Was it because of my behavior just now that gave her a glimmer of hope she shouldn't have? But in the next second, a fly suddenly dropped from the air onto the table, twitched a few times, and then went still. Then more flies began to fall, landing with soft thuds. I stared at the dead fly, then back at the kitchen knife on the floor. A terrifying thought struck me. Was the original Muji poisoned to death by this girl? My heart skipped a beat, but then I dismissed it. In my memories, she was as timid as a mouse. Where would she find the nerve? Perhaps the original owner drank himself to death. That seemed much more likely. I instinctively reached for a beer bottle nearby, intending to take a long swig, but that action alone made Ya Qingyan, who was hiding in the corner, start trembling violently again. Mu Ji was far more terrifying when drunk. She had actually thought for a moment that I had changed. How ridiculous of her. I saw her reaction and abruptly suppressed the craving in my body, tossing the beer bottle straight into the trash. I've had too much tonight. My head will be pounding tomorrow morning if I keep going. I'm done drinking, I said. Ya Qingyan's eyelashes fluttered. Alcohol was Mugi's lifeblood. He had never thrown a bottle away. This was truly unlike him. While she was still in a daze, I suddenly spoke up. Did you cook that shredded potato dish earlier? What did you season it with? It was true. Not only had she failed to kill me, but she'd been caught. Ya Qingyan's blood felt like it was turning to ice. Tense, she whispered her reply, vinegar, dried chili, and a bit of salt. That's it. Nothing else. I stared at her. Is that really all you put in? After 2 seconds of silence, suddenly laughed. You dummy. Don't you know you should add some soy sauce and sugar for flavor? What kind of cooking is that? Even a dog would jump up and cook a full meal for you if it tasted that. The tension in her nerves snapped, finally giving way to relief. Ya Qingyan almost collapsed, leaning heavily against the wall. She babbled her apologies. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I'll definitely remember next time. I waved her off impatiently. All right, fine. It didn't taste good anyway. Since it's gone, it's gone. At least I won't feel nauseous looking at it. Then I ordered, go to your room and sleep. You won't be getting a beating tonight. Ya Qingyan stood there, stunned. Her shock was even greater than her fear. She stared at me through her hair. The figure before her was both familiar and entirely foreign. I really had changed. She blurted out, almost as if possessed, "Who are you really?" I took a deep breath and began cleaning up the mess, unaware that behind me a cold gaze was peering through the crack of the door, pinned firmly onto my back. I expertly wiped the gleaming kitchen knife clean. It was a survival instinct it honed in my previous life. Even the pile of empty bottles in the corner were neatly stacked. After all, in this empty, wretched house, this pile of scrap was my only asset. Following that, I collapsed onto the creaking wooden bed, exhausted. The room was tiny and stifling, like a boiler. There was no air conditioning, not even a simple electric fan. I pushed open the window and looked at the distant, sparkling lights. Less than greater than. Considering installing iron bars for security. Less than greater than. But then I thought better of it. Less than greater than. Even a mouse would shun this destitute house, so who would even bother breaking in? Mu Ji had once held a mass compensation sum from his parents' death, plus a generous dowry meant for Ya Qingyan. He should have been living worry-free middle-class life. And the original owner was a gambler rotten to the core. He hadn't just burned millions at the gambling tables. He hadn't left a single cent to start a new life. Just the stomach's rumbling cut through my thoughts. I rushed into the kitchen and searched frantically, only to find that in the cupboard there was nothing but a single potato that had already started to sprout. Could the porridge Ya Qingyan gave me earlier have been made with poison like this too? I didn't have time to overthink it. I hurriedly pulled out my phone to check my balance. The next second, I'm completely stunned. My WeChat balance is negative 3,000 yuan, less than greater than. And my Alipay balance is negative 3,000 as well, less than greater than. That's exactly 6,000 yuan in debt, plus another 20,000 yuan in gambling debts. Just in this single day, that bastard blew through 6,000 yuan. Looking at this blinding gambling history, I feel like this start is so bad I just want to swear. Then a thought suddenly flashed through my mind. Since I didn't cause this mess, maybe I should just run away and be done with it. But on second thought, you need energy to run away. Rubbing my growling stomach, I decided to find something to eat first. But both WeChat and Alipay were emptied by that scumbag a long time ago. Even the credit limit is maxed out. I placed my only hope on Ya Qingyan's tightly closed door. After all, this sister, who was forced to drop out by the original owner, had to hand over all her part-time restaurant wages to him every day. I hesitated for a long time, but eventually hunger triumphed over my conscience. I walked up to the door, mimicked the original owner's hateful tone, and knocked. Are you asleep? Inside the room, Ya Qingyan was staring blankly at some pills in her drawer. That was the meager amount she had saved by skimping on food every day and risking her life through beatings to keep. The sudden knock on the door made her tremble, and she hurriedly let her hair down. She wasn't asleep. She knew pretending would be useless. That monster would just keep knocking until she finally opened the door. A second later, Ya Qingyan grabbed the scissors from under her pillow and gripped them tightly. The scissors, once meant as a wedding blessing, had now become her only weapon. Just then, my cold voice echoed from outside the door. Give me some money. Hearing the demand for money, Yan's frayed nerves suddenly relaxed, but it was followed by a wave of endless disappointment. She put the scissors on and pulled a stack of crumpled small bills from the drawer. Then she only opened the door a crack, trembling as she handed the money over. Looking down, her thin, pale arm looked strikingly frail under the light. The bills were crumpled, but a corner had been carefully smoothed out, with a single 1 yuan coin placed neatly on top. Seeing that I wasn't taking it, Yan thought I was dissatisfied with the amount and panicked. "This is really all the money I have." I remained silent, and Ya Qingyan's teeth began to chatter, hurriedly explaining, "The restaurant is closed for me tomorrow. I'll go collect scrap metal. I'll go out early to earn some more. But today, this is all there is." Hearing her teeth chat, a scene from the orphanage where I was bullied suddenly flashed in my mind. That rainy night, that older kid had forced me to hand over my only piece of bread just like this. I had huddled in the corner, trembling and utterly alone. The scene from that rainy night is so much like what's happening right now. I suddenly realized that my intention to run away was starting to waver. "Here's the money." Ya Qingyan's voice trembled, sounding as if she was on the verge of tears. I silently took the money and turned to leave. I only heard the sound of her bedroom door being slammed shut in a hurry. Back in my room, I pocketed my key and counted the money as I headed out. It was 81 yuan in total. I didn't touch the beat-up motorcycle covered in decals at the end of the alley. Instead, I chose to walk. The supermarket wasn't far, and I didn't need to be like before, revving engines with a bunch of thugs amidst residents' curses, just to find some cheap thrill. After a 10-minute walk, I stepped into a small supermarket. It was 8 p.m., and the vegetable section was empty. I only bought the cheapest dried noodles, 10 yuan worth of rice, a jar of Lao Gan Ma chili sauce, a piece of pork fat, a few eggs, and a pack of sausages. At that moment, from a small TV in the supermarket, an excited female anchor's voice rang out. Trifeng Media has released another hit short film, with views already exceeding 100 million. I glanced at the finely made-up face on the screen, then tapped on the counter. Lao Jiang, checkout. The owner, Lao Jiang, scanned for payment, his eyes showing unconcealed contempt. But I didn't care, carefully checking the amount on the receipt. After confirming there were no mistakes, I carefully tucked away the remaining 26 yuan. Carrying the bag of groceries home, I put the key in the lock and pushed the door open, only to find a light on at the entrance. I froze for a moment. I clearly remember turning off the lights when I left. In 2 lifetimes, this is the first time someone has left a light on for me. This light didn't just illuminate the darkness, it carried a burning warmth that shone directly into the depths of my heart. I walked into the living room, and my steps faltered once again. On the table sat a glass of warm water, steam fogging up the glass, with a single droplet slowly rolling down the side. I stared blankly at that water trail, feeling as though my heart had been struck by something heavy. I had intended to drink beer, but I had already thrown that beer away. Ya Qingyan must have noticed, and that's why she poured this water for me. In my past life, my greatest wish was to have a family, to have relatives. Everything this body had so easily, less than greater than. He had discarded like trash, less than greater than. The original owner was truly a scumbag, less than greater than. Treating such a good sister like that, less than greater than. I tried to suppress the rising emotions in my chest, less than greater than, as I picked up the glass. But just before drinking, I brought it to my nose to sniff it. After all, colorless and odorless poison is almost non-existent. The warm water flowed down my throat, bringing a strange sense of comfort. But I immediately became vigilant again. Staying here could be life-threatening, so I absolutely couldn't go soft. I decided to treat this as a farewell meal. I took the ingredients into the kitchen, used the freshly sharpened knife to cut the pork fat, and rendered it into lard. Then I minced the lean meat, frying it with the lard and Lao Gan Ma chili sauce. After scooping out the meat sauce, I started boiling the noodles. In no time, 2 steaming bowls of lard-mixed noodles were ready, with sausages and fried eggs on top, smelling delicious. I devoured 1 bowl, finally feeling a bit of warmth in my empty stomach. Then I carried the other to Ya Qingyan's room. I took a deep breath, switched to the original owner's impatient tone, and knocked. "Come eat." Ya Qingyan's terrified voice came from inside as she cautiously opened the door a crack. A fragrant bowl of noodles sat at the door, topped with a fried egg and a sausage. She asked in disbelief, Is this for me?" I returned to the dining table, eating while muttering curses. Nonsense. If you starve and get sick, who's going to earn money for me? I'm in a good mood today, so I'm granting you this. Make sure you bring home plenty of money tomorrow. I secretly planned that while she was out collecting scrap tomorrow, I would take the chance to slip away. But just as that thought occurred to me, I turned my head back and my heart sank. Ya Qingyan was crouching on the floor, taking tiny bites of the noodles, her movements almost tentative. She used the tips of her chopsticks to pierce the egg, letting the golden yolk run out, before mixing it with the noodles and taking a bite. To her, that egg seemed like the most exquisite delicacy in the world. I suddenly remembered a late night in my past life. When I was starving, a shop owner had given me a bowl of noodles with an egg just like this. At that time, my appearance was so similar to Ya Qingyan right now. The noodles on my chopsticks hovered in mid-air, not entering my mouth for a long time. My resolve to run away completely crumbled. I ate the noodles emotionlessly, finding no flavor in my mouth at all. Just then, Ya Qingyin's shoulders trembled slightly. It seemed she was crying. I irritably turned my head away, thinking to myself, damn it, it's just a bowl of noodles. What is there to cry about? I hate it when people cry. I forced myself to calm down, not forgetting that just a few hours ago, she might have killed me. That razor-sharp knife, maybe it was meant for dismemberment. At that thought, my hands shook violently, and the noodles slipped from my chopsticks into the bowl, splashing the broth everywhere. I have to run. If I don't, I'll end up dead in this dump sooner or later. I shoved a huge mouthful of noodles into my mouth, chewing mechanically. The steam from the bowl made my eyes blur a little, but here was everything I had longed for. This body is a debt I owe in this parallel world. I have to pay it back. I can't run away. I told myself, Muga, you lived all alone until you were 22. What are you afraid of now? Are you scared now? You want to dodge your responsibility, don't you? I felt incredibly conflicted. Should I run or should I stay? My logic screamed for me to leave immediately, but my mind kept replaying that lamp, that glass of water, and that thin figure trembling while eating noodles. After finishing the dishes, I saw Ya Qingyin still crouching by the door, sipping the broth. I could only use a coarse tone to hide the turmoil in my heart. Give me the bowl. Wash it yourself once you're done. With a bang, I slammed the bedroom door shut. Outside the door, Ya Qingyin murmured, has he changed? How could he have ever cooked noodles for me before? Inside the room, I leaned against the door and pulled out a coin. Since this life was a stroke of luck, then I might as well use the original owner's way and gamble on it one last time. I decided to leave my fate to heaven. Heads I stay, tails I leave. I flicked it hard with my thumb, and the coin spun through the air. Slap. I slapped my right hand down on the back of my left, my heart thumping like a drum. I carefully peeked into my palm, and through the gap the light reflected off the national emblem. I froze for 2 seconds, and suddenly burst into laughter. Many people think the number side is heads, but it's actually the emblem side that's heads. I told myself, since it's heaven's will, then I'll stay. This is my debt. I'll pay it back bit by bit. Lying on the stiff wooden bed, I began to sort through the mess. First, the rent is due in 7 days. The timing is tight. Time is very pressing. Second, I need to earn enough for Ya Qingyan's tuition next term to get her back into school. She shouldn't be buried in this mud. Finally, I have to improve her life, but everything must be handled carefully. I can't let her notice the change in me. With those plans in mind, I fell into a deep sleep. Sleep was surprisingly peaceful. Waking up the next day, I stared at the unfamiliar ceiling, remembering that I had transmigrated. Washing up, I noticed my toothbrush was new, while Ya Qingyan's bristles were completely worn out. My heart felt a sharp pang of pain again. Ya Qingyan brought over a bowl of plain porridge, timidly explaining, I'm sorry. I gave you all the money yesterday, so there's no money left for meat buns. I immediately went back on guard. She was testing the original owner's temper. The original owner required meat buns with his porridge. If there was only plain porridge like that, he would definitely resort to violence. To avoid exposure, I suddenly reached out and grabbed my sister's old collar, raising my fist high, my face instantly showing the original owner's signature brutality. Ya Qingyan let out a terrified scream, hurriedly raising her arms to cover her face, ready to endure the familiar pain. My fist trembled in midair, but I simply couldn't bring myself to strike her. After a 2-second struggle, I let go of her collar and roughly pushed her back. With my other hand, I pulled 5 yuan from my pocket and threw it onto the table. You want me to hurt you, so you can go out and play the victim, right? Stop acting. Go buy the buns. I don't have time to be embarrassed. Ya Qingyan stumbled back a step, looking at me in shock, then back at the money on the table. She hesitated for a moment and quickly grabbed the money and ran out with her head down. A short while later, Ya Qingyan brought back 2 char siu buns. I was already at the table sipping porridge, and I picked one up and took a huge bite. The savory aroma of fat immediately filled the room. However, Ya Qingyan only dared to hold her bowl and stand by the table taking small sips of porridge. I frowned and tossed the untouched bun still in his plastic bag at her. I drank too much last night, so I have no appetite. This bun is for you. Don't give me that miserable look. She picked up the bun and quietly retreated to the dark corner by the fridge, softly whispering, Thank you. I hadn't noticed this time her voice was gentle and pleasant without even a hint of a stutter. After finishing the porridge, I pushed the empty bowl away and stood up, heading straight out. I couldn't be like before, finding bad friends to gamble and drink with, then coming home late to demand money and hit people. I walked for a long time until I finally found a shopping mall with walls covered in recruitment notices. I noted down the names of the stores and went to each one to ask for work. The result was a cold rejection at every turn. No industry experience. What kind of job are you looking for here? Sorry, your image doesn't fit. We're not hiring. Get going. Don't disrupt my business. By noon, the feeling of failure and hunger hit me at the same time. I shamelessly walked into a KFC and quickly grabbed some leftover fries before the staff could clear them away. Even though they were ice cold, the high calorie could fill my stomach. This was a survival skill. From my days in the orphanage, I never thought I'd have to use it again today. Sitting on a mall bench, I slowly chewed the tasteless fries, my mind a mess of anxiety. The rent felt like an invisible noose slowly tightening. I had just over 10 yuan in my pocket, but I didn't want to spend because I didn't know if the girl at home had anything to eat. While lost in thought, someone suddenly called out from behind, "Muge!" I turned my head to see a guy with multicolored hair walking toward me. Mengzi. I gave a slight chin as a greeting. His name was Song Siyuan, another street thug just like me. Song Siyuan plopped down next to me and offered a cigarette. "Muge, what are you doing here?" I pushed his hand away. "Forget it. Smoking isn't allowed in the mall. I'm looking for a job." Song Siyuan looked at me like I was an alien. The cigarette in his mouth nearly fell out. "You're looking for a job?" He pretended to look up at the sky, his face full of disbelief. "The sun didn't rise in the west today, did it?" I chuckled. "How could you even see the sun from inside a mall?" He stared at me for a few seconds, then slapped his thigh as if realizing, "I get it. Muge, you lost everything again, didn't you? Short on cash again?" How many times have I told you? You lose 9 out of 10 games. It's best not to touch it. I put my arm around him. I know, Mengzi is right. I'll listen to you from now on. No more gambling. Sooner or later, I'd end up burning my whole life away on that. What? Song Siyuan froze as if paralyzed, his mouth hanging open for several seconds, unaware that his cigarette had dropped to the floor. A second later, he snapped out of it, staring at me, letting out a cry of shock from his throat. What the hell? I scowled, tried to speak a little more civilized, but Song Siyuan jumped up instantly, looking me up and down as if searching for something strange on my face. "Muge, you haven't been possessed by something, have you?" My heart skipped a beat, but I immediately put on the original owner's typical disgust, glancing at his colorful hair. "Possessed my foot, am completely broke, and am buried in debt. Without money, what am I supposed to gamble with? Maybe I should sell you to Uncle Hao. We could cut out one of your kidneys. It would probably fund me for a few days. Wait until I win back my stake, then I'll find someone to put the kidney back." Song Siyuan immediately pulled back. "Muge, not some machine part you can just swap in and out. Machine parts actually provide value. All you do is waste oxygen. They're worth less than a component." My scolding left him speechless, but his face was still full of disbelief. I changed the subject. Besides, people don't use terms like body possession anymore. Song Siyuan asked offhandedly. "Then what do they call it?" I said mysteriously, "In passing my cultivation and precious experience to you. The price is that your memories will gradually disappear." Song Siyuan was stunned by my words, then laughed and cursed. "Isn't that just possession anyway?" He quickly changed his tone. "But Muge, if you're really short on cash, less than greater than, just go find that girl. Sun Yu. Less than greater than, just a little bit of what slips through her fingers. Less than greater than, would be enough for you to live it up for a while." I said irritably, "Mengzi, can you use your brain for a second? You think I'd dare take that money? Sun Yu's father is Sun Hao, the very same Uncle Hao who's a loan shark. The original owner, knowing how to fight and fearing nothing, often helped him with dirty debt collection jobs and was highly valued by him. Sun Yu clung to the original owner every day, which made Sun Hao so angry his eyes nearly popped. I analyzed coldly. First, Sun Yu is grounded by Uncle Hao. Am I supposed to climb over walls to find her? Second, taking money from Sun Yu is like reaching directly into Uncle Hao's pocket. Besides, Uncle Hao warned me to stay away from her. Do you want me to experience his methods? Song Siyuan immediately shuddered. Never mind then. He picked up the cigarette from the ground, looking gloomy. I'm almost out of cigarettes, too. Uncle Hao's people haven't given any jobs to do for several days now. The thought of being a debt collector for Sun Hao and the sister at home who might have killed me made me feel like I was in a tangled mess. Original owner, you really deserve to die. I forced myself not to dwell on it any further and said to Song Siyuan, "Mengzi, why don't you come with me to find some work?" Song Siyuan immediately shuddered again. "Find a job? I'm never going to work a job in my life." Song Siyuan waved his hands, spouting his twisted philosophy. "Working is just waiting for retirement. Just thinking about it is terrifying. How could anyone endure that?" I was genuinely shocked. "Mengzi, you see through the world so deeply. I really underestimated you." Unexpectedly, he chuckled. "I saw some video online where people said that. But Muji, there's someone in that alley hiring flyer distributor. You could go check it out." After speaking, he pulled out his last 50 yuan and headed straight to the internet cafe to play games. I decided to hand out flyers first, Earning some lunch money is better than sitting idle. I walked out of the mall and indeed found a recruitment stall in the back alley. The sign read, "Hiring flyer distributors. 120 yuan a day, 50 yuan for half a day, daily payment." I walked up and the man with a cigarette in his mouth glanced at me and without a word, shoved a thick stack of flyers into my hand. "Hand them all out in this area and then come back for your pay. Don't be lazy and dump them. I have people watching." But when I took the flyers and looked down, the corner of my mouth began to twitch. It turned out to be flyers for ancestral medicinal wine, specifically for men's private health issues. The wording was incredibly graphic, the images wildly exaggerated, and the whole thing was full of vulgarities. At this point, I completely understood why they were willing to hire someone like me. People with any sense of dignity wouldn't have the courage for this. I'll earn 50 yuan first, get today's meal money, then worry about the rest. I took the stack of flyers and began handing them out under the scorching July sun. As a result, passers-by either ignored me and walked away or looked at me with eyes full of contempt. My sweat poured down like rain. The tiger head t-shirt on my chest was completely soaked. I had no choice but to stop at a fast food joint to ask for a cup of water. Seeing my fierce appearance, the counter staff hurriedly filled a Coke cup with water and handed it to me. By the time the sun began to set, my head was starting to spin. I finally finished handing out the flyer and walked back to the alley entrance exhausted. Unexpectedly, the middle-aged man cleaning up his stall pulled out 50 yuan and handed it to me without hesitation. "You handed them out pretty well. Just dump them somewhere. Coming back tomorrow? I'll save a spot for you." "It's 120 yuan for the whole day," I repeatedly thanked him. "Thank you, boss." It was getting dark. I walked home clutching the 50 yuan I had struggled to earn. But right at that moment, a burning craving surged within my body, suddenly snapping awake. It felt like countless tiny ants were crawling frantically through my veins. My alcohol addiction was kicking in. My finger began to tremble involuntarily. My throat went dry instantly, and a frantic thought screamed in my head. Even the cheapest bottle of beer would do, just one bottle. But as soon as the thought appeared, I gritted my teeth and pinched my thigh as hard as I could. I used the pain to fight back against that physiological craving. This is only the second day. I absolutely cannot let these desires defeat me. I spat on the ground and punched my own chest. My footsteps faltered as I stumbled toward the house, each step feeling like I was escaping an invisible swamp. I finally climbed the stairs and reached the iron door with peeling paint. My hands were shaking so violently that I couldn't even get the key into the lock. The faint clinking of metal seemed to mock my pathetic state. Just as I was becoming so agitated I was about to lose control, there was a click. Door opened and Ya Qingyan was standing at the entrance. She had just finished bathing. What stunned me was the warm yellow light spilling from the room, along with a glass of hot water on the dining table, a large bowl of plain porridge, a plate of boiled pork head meat, and 2 steamed buns. I froze at the porch, and the burning alcohol addiction in my body, as if hitting a warm wall, gradually faded away. In this moment, I suddenly realized I only had a place to stay, not a home. But now behind this door there was light, there was food, and there was a younger sister. This was the glimmer of light that in both my lives, less than greater than, I could only ever touch in my dreams. Less than greater than. Seeing me daze, Ya Qingyan, less than greater than, warily backed away. Less than greater than. "Wait," I called out to her. Her body trembled. Is something wrong?" I walked over to the table and sat down, picked up the chopsticks and pointed to the chair opposite me, using the unquestionable tone of the original owner to command. She hesitated, but ultimately shook her head. I don't dare. I didn't force her. Slurped a large mouthful of porridge and looked up at her. "Have you eaten tonight?" "I have." "Eaten what?" I pressed. She replied, "Plain porridge." I paused mid-swallow, then impatiently tapped the table. "Buy 1 more bun tomorrow night. 2 aren't enough. They have to be meat buns, understand?" "Yes." I nodded in satisfaction and casually asked, "How much did you make collecting scrap today?" Ya Qingyan immediately pulled a small stack from her pocket, crumpled chain paper bills carefully smoothed out, neatly organized by denomination. She handed it over with both hands, her thin wrists showing bone. But I didn't take it. I just watched her being so incredibly cautious, and in my heart, a bitter ache of pity surged. She's only 16 years old. She should be a pampered little princess. Instead, she has to take care of me, even rummaging through filthy trash for scrap, just to exchange it for these few crumpled yuan, and then tremblingly hand it over to me, out of fear of getting beaten. Seeing me daze, her hands remained extended, not daring to pull back. I sighed inwardly. I waved my hand dismissively. 40. That's an unlucky number. Keep it for yourself so your bad luck doesn't rub off on me. Ya Qingyan suddenly looked up, glancing at me quickly, a flicker of emotion passing through the depths of her eyes. I immediately frowned, feigning disdain, as if I truly just hated that number. Only then did she slowly pull her hands back, carefully putting the money back into her pocket. Worked all day and only got that much? I cleared my throat, my voice remaining as stiff as before. Don't go out digging through trash cans tomorrow. Ya Qingyan looked at me in confusion. Don't go anymore? I suddenly raised my voice. I'm a well-known figure on this street. You picking up trash outside is making me lose face. Then I started making up a story about meeting Song Xiyuan today. That brat said he saw you out there, picking up trash, and he mocked me for half the day.
As expected, Ya Qingyan bowed her head apologetically. I'm sorry I made you lose face. If you know that, then don't go. I snorted coldly. Stay home for me tomorrow, and make sure you clean the house properly. It's so messy that flies are about to nest here. Unexpectedly, she stayed silent for a few seconds, fidgeting with her shirt, and whispered, But our rent is about to expire. The landlord said he'll evict us if we can't pay. 1,000+ yuan is nothing. I scoffed, putting on a reckless air. Who are you looking down on? I have my own ways. Honestly, I was worried sick inside. If I only relied on handing out flyers, it would take over 10 days without eating or drinking to save enough. After eating, I put down my chopsticks and went back to my room, leaning my back against the door, exhaling in relief. Acting is really exhausting. I have to be very careful. If she ever finds out I'm not him, with just one phone call, she could have me sent to a mental hospital, and this second life I've picked up would be over. At the same time, Ya Qingyan went back to her room, also finding it hard to believe. This was already the second day she hadn't been beaten, he hadn't demanded money, nor had he drunk any alcohol. A sudden thought flashed through her mind. Could he have actually died back then? Is the person who woke up now someone else? On my end, I was still brooding over money matters, yet I fell fast asleep the moment my head hit the pillow. Waking up the next morning, I walked out of the bedroom and saw Ya Qingyan at the door. She was preparing to go out. I immediately frowned, my voice showing clear dissatisfaction. What are you doing? Didn't I tell you not to go picking up trash? Ya Qingyan explained hurriedly. No, it's not that. I'm just going out to buy buns. Only then did I relax my face. And while yawning loudly, I said, Then buy me a carton of milk while you're at it. Having said that, I shuffled my slippers toward the bath. However, Ya Qingyan stood stunned in place. Hadn't he said before that milk was only for children and women? Although full of doubt, she still nodded in agreement. Yes, I'll be right back. Breakfast shop owner, Wei Fong, picked up a carton of milk, her voice dripping with contempt. That bastard is getting more pretentious by the day, acting all high and mighty drinking milk in the morning. I'm telling you, Xiao Nam, you're just too kind-hearted. If he ever bullies you again, just tell me. She handed the bag to the girl, then asked caringly. He hasn't beaten you lately, has he? Child, you must protect yourself a bit. Record him secretly, and I'll help you report him. Ya Qingyan shook her head. Auntie Bui, I'm okay. He's changed a lot. A leopard can't change its spots. Auntie Bui immediately grew anxious. There's a guy in my neighborhood, beats his wife, then kneels down to kowtow and apologize. And what happened in the end? He was good for 3 days, then beat her so hard she was hospitalized, with 3 broken ribs. That kind of person is rotten to the core. You absolutely must not lower your guard. Auntie Bui's words were like a bucket of cold water, instantly dousing the flicker of hope that had just begun to spark in Ya Qingyan's heart. She didn't dare think further. What if he was still the same person? Back at the house, I saw her return and asked, It was just buying buns. Why did it take so long? Ya Qingyan lied. It was crowded, so I had to wait in line. I pointed to the table. Let's eat. Porridge and 2 sets of bowls and chopsticks were already on the table, even the leftover pork head meat from last night. Seeing her daze, I sat down and slurped my porridge. What do you have to be standing to eat? Ya Qingyan hesitated for a moment, thinking of Auntie Bu's warning, and ultimately didn't dare move. She picked up her bowl, habitually retreating into the shadows next to the refrigerator. I didn't bother with her anymore. Took the bag, opened the milk, and poked the straw in. Just as I brought it to my lips, my movement suddenly stopped. I frowned and clicked my tongue in disgust. The next second, I suddenly looked up, staring toward Ya Qingyan with an unfriendly tone. This menu milk smells fishy. I've never drunk this in my life. Don't you know that? Ya Qingyan stopped eating immediately. Her body stiffened, the blood in her body seemingly turning cold. As expected, it was happening. He was looking for an excuse, and next would be smashing things and throwing punches. What Auntie Bu said was absolutely right. Fear like cold seawater immediately submerged her, and Ya Qingyan couldn't stop trembling, fingers gripping the rim of the bowl tightly. She even sensed that in the next second, that milk carton would be hurled straight at her face. However, I just grew impatient and pushed the milk carton toward the edge of the table, where she was sitting, my tone aggressive. Taste it yourself and see if it's fishy. It's terrible. It's a reward for you. Take it quickly. Don't leave it here to annoy me. Ya Qingyan was completely dazed. She stared at that milk carton, then back at me as I was focused on slurping my porridge. Didn't you want to hit me? Did he just give it to me because he thought it was bad? She carefully reached out, taking the milk carton that still held a bit of warmth from my hand, and took a tiny sip. The milk's aroma spread through her mouth, bringing with it a subtle sweetness. This was a luxury flavor she hadn't tasted in a long time.
Was it really because he thought it was bad? A bolder hypothesis, uncontrollably surfaced in her mind. Could he be using this method to let her drink the milk? But she immediately extinguished that thought. Ya Qingyan, oh Ya Qingyan, don't be so sentimental and delude yourself. After finishing the meal, pointed to the plate of meat on the table. Throw this away. Buy some new ones tonight. I don't want to be eating leftovers every day. As soon as I spoke, I hurried out, the iron door slamming shut. Ya Qingyan stood waiting for a long time, and only after making sure I wouldn't return did she dare go to the table, finish the milk, and quietly ate all the remaining pork head meat. Her stomach was full, but her mind was in a turmoil. As for me, I had walked for a full half hour, arriving at the place where I handed out flyers yesterday and sat on the curb to wait. There was no other way. I felt that Ya Qingyan's wariness had increased again. Whenever I was home, she didn't dare sit at the table, so I had to give her some private space. Finally, the middle-aged man arrived on his bicycle, and seeing that I had been waiting early, he was slightly surprised. He glanced at my slippers and loafers and flicked a cigarette over. Ha! You're early, kid. I took the cigarette and tucked it behind my ear. Thanks, Uncle. I'll work first and smoke once I'm done. I want to finish early to get home in time for dinner. When I said the words get home, even my own heart felt a strange stir. The man laughed meaningfully. Got someone cooking for you at home? I wouldn't have guessed. I understood his implication and could only manage a wry smile. Yes, I do. Then the man handed me a stack of flyers. Same rules as before, clear this area out. The sunlight was extremely harsh. The t-shirt on my back never had a chance to dry. Luckily, with yesterday's experience, my speed was much faster today. At dusk, I dragged my feverish body back to the alley entrance, and the man counted out 120 yuan and gave it to me. I took the money and asked, "Meet someone tomorrow too, Uncle." To my surprise, the man shook his head and blew a ring of smoke. The boss said the results haven't been good these past 2 days. This shop isn't handing them out anymore. I was immediately disappointed. Unemployed already? But then I thought, in this day and age, using this method for advertising, it's only natural that the results are poor. I said my and turned to leave. Wait! The man suddenly called me back and I turned around. His gaze rested on my straight back. Do you really want to find a job? My eyes lit up and I nodded vigorously. He asked again, can you endure hardship? I continued to nod. Only then did the man give me a phone number. Call this number tomorrow morning. Just say old 2 referred you. Whether it works out or not is up to you. I immediately saved the number, thanked him, thrust my hands into my pocket and walked home clutching the 120 yuan I'd just earned. This amount was barely anything. Rent day was fast approaching and it was worrying me to death. I took a few turns in the maze-like alley and found a shop. The sign where only 2 words were lit. ExpressNet. As soon as I pushed the door open, the smell of sweat, instant noodle, and foot odor hit me square in the face. The machines here were ancient and the keyboards were greasy with oil, but it had one advantage. It was cheap. Less than. Only 3 yuan per hour. Less than. Sure enough, after just a few steps, less than. I saw a head. Less than. With so many colors, it looked like a light spectrum. Less than. Song Si-yuan was sitting there with his mouth agape. Less than. Watching a streamer dance and sending comments. I walked over and slapped that rainbow head hard. Stop topping up. Save your money for food. Song Si-yuan was about to explode in anger, but seeing it was me, he immediately softened. Brother Mu, why are you here? I replied irritably. I'm afraid you will die in this internet cafe and ruin the owner's business. He pouted. Brother Mu, your mouth is as toxic as ever. I took the sweat-soaked cigarette from my ear and threw it away, then pulled out 20 yuan and handed it to him. Go out later and get something decent to eat. Don't actually go and die here. Song Si-yuan took the money blankly, staring dazed at my retreating back, even forgetting to play his game. The song played in his headphones. Even a cyclone has a path home. His father died early, and his mother worked in a textile mill, raising him alone until he was 15, until she developed lung cancer and threw herself from a building. She thought she could leave her on 200,000 yuan in insurance money, but she didn't know that the accident insurance policy had long since expired. 15, Song Si-yuan held his mother's body and became an orphan ignored by everyone. From then on, no one cared, whether he was well fed or not. Now he slowly squeezed the 20 yuan bill, pressing it tightly against his chest. As for me, after leaving the internet cafe, I dragged my weary body home. Walking past a sidewalk stall, I suddenly stopped, remembering Ya Qingyan's worn-out, ragged slippers. Even the heel part was torn off.
She surely must have scavenged them from some trash pile. I gripped the last 100 yuan bill in my pocket and sat down, picking out a pair of pink slippers and 2 toothbrushes. The old stall owner's eyes were drowsy as he listened to a radio blaring a shrill sound. That's 20 yuan total. The radio was playing a news broadcast. I paid and walked home with a plastic bag. Unexpectedly, passing a convenience store, less than greater than. I caught sight of various bottles of alcohol on the shelves. Less than greater than. The craving in my body immediately surged. Less than greater than. My throat went dry. Less than greater than. And my fingers clenched uncontrollably. I closed my eyes tightly, cursing inwardly. You're dirt poor. Why are you even thinking about drinking? Only then did I force myself to look away and return to the building, that gray apartment complex. But just as I reached the second floor, I stopped right in front of my door, leaning against the cold wall and panting. Cold sweat trickled down my forehead, and the alcohol addiction made my hands shake incessantly. The sound sensor light flickered out, leaving only the sound of suppressed, ragged breathing in the dark. I don't know how long passed before the addiction finally began to subside. I rubbed my face hard with my hand and inserted the key into the lock. With a click, the door opened, and immediately, the warm yellow light and the aroma of food rushed over me, like entering a different world. To my surprise, everything in the house had been refreshed. The stains on the furniture were gone, the floor and windows were scrubbed clean, even the dingy curtains had been washed, and the spice jars in the kitchen even neatly arranged in order. Ya Qingyan had finished cooking the porridge, and had bought some beef cheek meat and 3 buns. My hands were still shaking slightly, as I handed her the plastic bag. You've been behaving quite well lately. She fell silent for a few seconds, reaching out to take the very light bag, opened it with her head bowed. Inside were pink plastic slippers featuring snow-white, crude slippers, obviously from a sidewalk stall, and next to them lay 2 toothbrushes. She stared at that pink color for a long time, her long hair falling down to hide her expression. Then her fingers slowly tightened, clutching the bag handles in her palm. She whispered, "Thank you." I sat down to eat my porridge, pointing to the chair opposite me. "Sit down. Less than greater than. I have something to tell you." Less than greater than. She hesitated a moment before tiptoeing over, less than greater than, only daring to perch on the edge of the chair. Less than greater than. Right then, less than greater than. I said while slurping porridge, "I've thought it over. You have to go back to school. Don't go out waitressing anymore tomorrow. Use your time to study properly. Only with an education can you earn more money later." Ya Qingyan shuddered slightly. The words "go to school" for her felt as distant as a story from a previous life. To her surprise, I pointed at her and laughed loudly. Less than greater than. Wait until you graduate from university. Less than greater than. You'll have to bring back 1 million yuan before you're allowed to leave. Less than greater than. If you can't earn it, then as a sister. Less than greater than. I'll stick to you for the rest of my life. Less than greater than. As soon as those words left my mouth, a deadly silence fell over the room. A long time later, Ya Qingyan finally regained her composure, fidgeting with her shirt as she whispered, "Yeah, I understand." I finished 2 meat buns, left the third one on the table, put down my chopsticks, and went straight to my room. I irritably scratched my head. I knew I shouldn't have changed so quickly, but I really couldn't help myself. I've tasted hardship myself, so I know exactly how painful it feels, and her situation was much worse than mine. I could only comfort myself. That luckily she didn't seem to suspect anything. She probably hadn't seen through this shell yet. I was still brooding over the money, yet I fell into a deep sleep the moment I hit the pillow. However, what I didn't know was that while I was fast asleep, Ya Qingyan in the next room was suffering from insomnia. She lay tossing and turning on the wooden bed, and images from over 4 months ago flashed through her mind. Less than greater than. The day she had walked home with her school bag. Less than greater than. More than 4 months ago. Less than greater than. Back then, she was still a diligent student. But the moment she pushed open the door and entered the house, hell had immediately descended. A drunken Mugi was sitting at the table, empty liquor bottles scattered across the floor, the stench of alcohol suffocating. In that moment, her heart felt like it had plummeted into an abyss. With just one look, she knew he had lost all of his money again, because his terrifying silence was a sure sign of the seething fury and irritation within. And it was just as expected, a dull, dry thud echoed. Mugi slammed the wine bottle on the ground and lunged at her with a roar. She gripped her backpack straps tightly, just about to move out of the way, but in the next second, a piercing slap rang out. A slap landed squarely on her face without warning. The force was so strong, it sent her staggering to the side. In an instant, her mouth was filled with a metallic, rusty taste of blood. Mugi pointed at her face, spewing out vile curses. "It's all because of a cursed jinx like you. Ever since you brought your pathetic self into this house, everything I do turns into a disaster." He grew more furious as he spoke, and before we could finish his sentence, a heavy punch slammed into her stomach. The excruciating pain made her curl up like a small shrimp, feeling as if her internal organs were shattered by that blow. But Muji's insults didn't stop there. You jinxed my parents to death. Now I can't even win a single round of gambling. He became more agitated as he cursed, suddenly delivering a vicious kick to her calf, then screamed out in a frenzy. Even the money from selling the house is all gone today. It's all thanks to you. Heart-wrenching pains surged. She collapsed to the ground, her body powerless, less than greater than. Only able to curl up and inhale less than greater than. Sharp gulps of cold air to suppress the pain. Less than greater than. Yet Muji still roared, forcing her to stand up. She clung to the wall, tremblingly regaining her footing. Right at that moment, Muji suddenly asked, "Why did you bother crawling back here today?" She sobbed and replied in a tiny voice, "The school has a holiday." Unexpectedly, Muji burst into a scornful laugh, his face full of contempt. "What's the use of going to school? Can it produce any money?" He suddenly barked out, completely extinguishing her last spark of hope. "Don't go to school anymore starting tomorrow. This house is out of money. How much longer do you plan on being a parasite?" Ya Qingyan snapped her head, her eyes filled with terror and desperation. But I want to go to school, because that was her only path to escape this living hell. But her plea only met with a more violent outburst from Muji. "You want to go to school? In your dreams." He savagely squeezed her slender neck, each finger tightening ruthlessly. A sense of suffocation immediately surrounded her. Her vision began to darken. She could only desperately kick and punch against that arm as hard as steel. In her ear was the devil's whisper. "If you don't agree, I'll go to your school and cause a scene. Let's see if you can still study then." She didn't doubt it for a second. If she didn't submit, this madman would surely choke her to death. So with her last bit of strength, she blinked frantically as a sign of surrender. Only then did Muji let out a cold snort and release his grip. She immediately collapsed onto the floor like a pile of mud, gasping for every precious breath of air. Since that fateful day, she was robbed of her right to go to school, pushed into a dark abyss with no way out. She never imagined in 1,000 years that the very man who pushed her into hell years ago, a few months later, would actually say to her personally, "You should go back to school." That night she returned to her room and took out an old family photo. In the photo, her foster parents were beaming. Only he stood aside with a face full of annoyance. Hot tears fell steadily onto the picture. She silently apologized to her deceased foster parents. "I promise you both would look after him, but I really can't take it anymore." At that very moment, a crazy thought took root in her heart. She had to kill this scumbag of a brother. But as dawn approached, she dreamed of a completely different version of him. In the dream, he brought her a steaming bowl of noodles with a fried egg on top, gave her snow-white slippers, and even gently said, "You should go to school." Until the sound of a car horn outside the window woke her. She startled and opened her eyes. Less than greater than. A question lingering in her mind. Less than greater than. Can a person really change that fast? Less than greater than. The answer came immediately. Impossible. Less than greater than. Living together for 9 years, she knew exactly what kind of person he was. Hot-tempered, arrogant, and cruel. Even a stray cat on the side of the road he could trample under his feet, then laugh gleefully at its miserable cries. How could someone like that change? So this person definitely wasn't him. The alarm rang and I stepped out of the bedroom. Seeing Ya Qingyan had already prepared breakfast, I sat down at the dining table. Seeing her standing there like an eyesore, I barked, "Sit down and eat." Then I tapped on the table, starting my act. "Do you remember what I told you?" She lowered her head and whispered, "I remember. I have to study hard so I can bring back 1,000,000 yuan for you later." "Good." I nodded with satisfaction, then continued to order. "From today on, don't go to that diner to wait tables anymore. Stay home and focus on your studies." Unexpectedly, she murmured, "I still have to go out for a bit to talk to the diner owner first." I didn't realize it was a test at all. Nodded. "Yeah, come back to study right after. I'll check your work tonight. If you can't do it, don't blame this fist for being merciless." Seeing her shrink back in fear, I felt immensely proud of myself, because I not only found the perfect excuse to make her go to school, but also didn't let her have a shred of doubt. I thought to myself, with this acting skill, if I entered showbiz, I'd surely bag a few major awards. After eating, I stepped out, pulled out a business card, and called the number old Sue had recommended. The person on the other end gave an address. It seemed a bit far, but without a word, I hopped on my motorcycle and sped there. When I arrived, it was the entrance of an old apartment building where a few people were busy surrounded by a set of filming equipment. I parked my bike and stepped forward. "Im Muji," recommended here by old Sue. The young man in charge immediately walked over. Im Su Wenxian. He was a content creator, pointed at the building and got straight to the point. "Our program this time is called Challenge the Stair-Climbing God." "What's today's challenge?" Su Wenxian explained clearly. It was to follow a man named Brother Chang, carrying all the construction materials to the 10th floor for him. Every single bit of it. I wondered, why not use a hoist? It turned out the construction was urgent and couldn't wait for a permit, so hiring manual labor was more economical and efficient. I nodded to show I understood. Then, Su Wenxian offered an attractive payment. As long as I completed the entire route, I would receive a 1,000 yuan reward. However, the assistant Xiao Chen warned, this really isn't for ordinary people. You can quit at any time. Su Wenxian added, hey buddy, we'll be live streaming later. It's not that we're looking down on you, but looking at you, this kind of hardship, not everyone can swallow it. Just glancing over the building once, I nodded decisively. I'm in urgent need of money. Let's do it. As soon as I finished, a truck pulled up. A man stepped down from the cabin. His physique was as robust as an ancient Greek sculpture. That was Brother Chang. But when he saw my appearance, a hint of surprise flashed in his eyes. He came closer, felt my biceps and shoulders, and declared bluntly, Kid, your muscles are a bit soft, less than greater than. I'm afraid you'll run out of breath after 2 or 3 trips. Less than greater. He emphasized, my program has done 5 episodes. Less than greater. And no one has successfully completed the challenge yet.
Don't waste your effort, only to end up with nothing. I warmed up my body a little, flashing a defiant smile. I tasted all kinds of hardship. Let's start, Brother Chang. Seeing that he couldn't persuade me, Brother Chang could only hoist 2 bags of cement from the truck, getting ready to work. But I suddenly blurted out, wait. Brother Chang breathed a sigh of relief. Even Su Wenxian ran over to pat my shoulder. It's okay, you can quit whenever you want. Don't put too much pressure on yourself. Who knew I would say? Who said I'm quitting? I looked around. You guys are filming and my face will be shown, right? I want to ask if there is a mask. I want to cover my face a bit. This sentence left everyone stunned. Assistant Xiao Chen rummaged in his bag and pulled out a mask for me. After putting it on, only my sharp, cold eyes and messy hair were visible. I said firmly, all right, let's begin. The next second, cameraman turned on his phone and the live stream began. Comments immediately appeared on the screen. Wow, today's challenger looks so scrawny. I bet he'll be on his knees begging after the first trip. The comments on the live stream began to mock me crazily. If you lose, live stream doing a handstand while washing your hair. With a mask on, no one even knows who you are. Are you afraid of losing face? Ha ha. But right then, Brother Chang easily hoisted 2 bags of cement onto his shoulders, weighing about 100 kilograms. When it was my turn, I had to rely on the truck drivers to laboriously get 1 bag onto my back. After climbing only 2 floors, sweat was already drenching my shirt, and my breathing began to grow heavy. I stared intently at the steps beneath my feet, trying to keep up with Brother Chang's pace. After finishing the first trip, I was already gasping for air. Yet on the second trip, Brother Chang continued to carry 2 bags of cement. I gritted my teeth, intending to carry more as well, but Su Wenxian immediately stopped me. The challenger only needs to carry 1 bag. When I finished the second trip and came down, my calves had started to tremble. On the third trip, sweat soaked my entire body. The wet mask clung tightly to my face, and every breath brought a heavy resistance. The fourth trip ended, and the last of the cement was finally carried up. Brother Chang looked at my miserable state, his voice softening slightly. You're quite something. You look like those bums on the street. Didn't expect you to last 4 trips. The live stream room also exploded immediately. This guy actually carried 4 trips. Who was it that said he'd collapse on the first one? Step out. I peeled off the mask, quickly drank a bottle of Agastache elixir, and sighed. What can I say? If I don't earn money, less than greater than. I won't even have a place to stay. Less than greater than. After resting for a while, less than greater than. The afternoon's hauling work began. Less than greater than. I felt like these legs no longer belonged to me. Less than greater than. They were as stiff as 2 pieces of wood, my entire skeleton groaning under the overload. For lunch, I devoured 5 bowls of rice. My hands were shaking so much I couldn't even pick up food. In the afternoon, we had to carry foam bricks. Su Wenxian announced the rules. Each trip is 50 kilograms. However many trips Brother Chang climbs, you climb too. These things were very bulky and very difficult to grip. I gritted my teeth and followed Brother Chang for 2 more trips, but by the 3rd trip, my face was pale and my steps were faltering. As I went up, my whole body started to sway as if about to fall. Su Wenxian saw I had reached my limit. Afraid something would happen, he urged. Just forget it. Let's stop here for today. But I suddenly glared at him, my eyes flashing with an extreme stubbornness, roaring 3 words, I can do it. This chance to earn 1,000 yuan a day, I absolutely could not miss, as long as I got enough for this month's rent. Ya Qingyan and I wouldn't have to live on the streets. Su Wenxian said, consider yourself half successful. I'll give you 500. But I shook my head decisively. He was anxious. Look at you, you can't even walk straight. There's at least 3 trips left. You can't handle it. But in my mind, the image of Ya Qingyan appeared, her pitiful look as she crouched by the door eating noodles. I gritted my teeth and screamed, I can do it. I can definitely do it. I was like a raging beast carrying the tied-up bricks, painfully crawling up each step.
My shoes were soaked with sweat, each step leaving a damp mark on the ground. My whole body was shaking violently, my gasping breath echoing through the hallway like an old bellows.
The mask was stuck to my face, less than greater than. Each inhale as painful as a form of torture. Less than greater than. I clung tightly to the railing, less than greater than. Wheezing to the cameraman, please take off the mask for me, I can't breathe anymore. The livestream room exploded instantly. The camera lens zoomed in. Let's see what this guy really looks like. He's truly risking his life. This is way beyond the script, right? The next second, the lens captured my face for the first time. A face drenched in sweat, pale and expressionless. The look on it was fierce and distorted with pain. Even Su Wenxian was terrified, watched and advised again. Buddy, if it's really not working, just stop. I'll count it as 80% completion. I suddenly turned my head, my eyes full of raw ferocity. I said, I can do it. The comments on the live stream went quiet for a second, then erupted violently. That look gave me goosebumps. What a ruthless guy to himself. I turned away, hands gripping the iron railing, the veins on the back of my hands bulging. My ears began to ring. The 50-kilogram stack of foam bricks on my shoulder now felt like a ton. Less than greater than. Nearly crushing me. Less than greater than. For a moment, less than greater than. I felt like I was back in the sweltering summer of my previous life. Less than greater than. Standing on an outdoor stage, the sun so harsh it made me dizzy, but the thunderous applause from below woke my willpower. Grit your teeth. Overcoming this will end the loneliness of the past life. Less than greater than. I can't fall before the mess left by this body's owner. Less than greater than. This 50 kilograms weight. Less than greater than. Certainly can't knock me down. I rallied my spirit. Less than greater than. Trying to climb a few more steps. Under the camera lens, I opened my mouth wide to breathe, out, gasping like an old wolf dying in the middle of winter. A distorted face, both furious and savage, both tragic and agonizing, guilt, regret, countless emotions intertwined. Shu Wenxian and the entire audience had never seen on a human face. Less than greater than, such intense and complex emotions. Less than greater than, I swallowed hard. Less than greater than, roaring fiercely, I don't believe it. Less than greater than, if Brother Chang can do it, so can I. Today I must complete this challenge. As soon as I finished, my vision started to blur. Countless dancing spots of light appeared before my eyes. I could only use my arms to cling to the railing, unconsciously moving one heavy step at a time. Suddenly, less than greater than, I felt the bricks on my shoulder lighten, less than greater than, and turned my head to look. Less than greater than. It turned out Xiao Chen was secretly helping me support it, and the cameraman A. Jia understood and moved the lens elsewhere. I don't know how much time passed, but just as I thought I couldn't lift my leg anymore, the last stack of bricks reached the 10th floor. A large, powerful hand immediately supported me. Shu Wenxian gave me an energy drink and gave a thumbs up. Buddy, you're amazing. You're the first one in. Programmed to complete this challenge. That sound seemed to echo from a distant place. I bent over, asking in a raspy voice, is it over? Brother Chang and Xiao Chen both smiled and nodded. It's over. You succeeded. I suddenly looked up at the sky and laughed out loud. I told you, I could definitely do it. Right on the live stream room, comments appeared again. Holy cow. Buddy, you don't look good at all. Someone really find this look attractive. He's also just a human after all. He's wearing a mask of pain. Xiao Chen brought the microphone to my mouth. Audience member on the stream wants to ask you, why did you risk your life like that? I slowly straightened my back, flashing a weak smile. I don't really know, maybe because there's a little kitten at home I need to feed. Xiao Chen was stunned. A little kitten. What's that kitten like? In my mind, Qingyan's face appeared, and I replied softly, a very pitiful kitten, very skinny, but also very cute. As soon as I finished, Shu Wenxian transferred 1,500 yuan to me via WeChat. I quickly said, buddy, you transferred too much. Shu Wenxian shook his head. It's not too much. 1,000 yuan is the reward, and the other 500 yuan is support from the friends on the live stream for you. They gave it as an extra. At this moment, I stood before the lens and bowed deep. Although it was just a simple bow, it made my whole body tremble, and it took a lot of effort to do. The live stream ended, and Brother Chang walked over, handing me a bottle of medicinal oil. Use this to massage, otherwise you won't be able to crawl out of bed tomorrow. I spoke sincerely. I know you had to wait for me for a long time this afternoon. I bothered you and made you stay late. Right then, Shu Wenxian told Xiao Chen to take my motorcycle, to take me home. It's dangerous for you to drive yourself in this state. I didn't insist anymore because my limbs really were falling apart and my head was dizzy. The cameraman, AG, joked, Mugu, bows and apologizes, quite different from your usual image. I only gave a bitter smile, thinking in my heart after paying the rent, I definitely have to go get a haircut.
I plan to get a haircut after paying the rent and then buy a set of new clothes. Oh right, I also have to buy for Ya Qingyan a few decent sets of clothes. I couldn't help but sigh. I really need to earn money quickly. Otherwise, I won't even have money for gasoline for the motorcycle to deliver goods to fill up the motorcycle. Returning to the stairs, I refused Zhao Chen's kindness of wanting to take me up to my room. I'm a very vigilant person, not wanting anyone to know where I actually live. But just as Zhao Chen was about to turn away, a very heated argument suddenly broke out on the second floor. I was startled with alarm. That sound was clearly Ya Qingyan's. Her voice was too unique. I recognized it immediately. The next second, from my exhausted body, I squeezed out the last bit of strength and staggered straight upstairs. As soon as I reached the second floor, I saw the landlord in a tank top with hands on hips, aggressively scolding the frail Ya Qingyan. I rent out rooms to make money, not for charity. If you don't have money, get your ass out of here early. Don't get in the way of my business. The landlord's thick finger was almost poking Ya Qingyan's forehead. His mouth spewed out extremely vulgar and filthy words. Ya Qingyan could only clutch her shirt tightly, less than greater than. Her whole body shaking with fear, less than greater than. Not daring to say a single word back, less than greater than. My head thundered with a loud bang, less than greater than, and hot blood immediately rushed to my brain, less than greater than. I lunged forward, grabbed Ya Qingyan's wrist, pulled her behind my back decisively, and roared at the landlord. Watch your mouth and speak cleanly. You old geezer. The landlord was stunned. Who are you calling an old geezer? I gave a cold sneer. Are you deaf or is there something wrong with your brain? I insulted you to your face and you still don't get it. Zhao Chen, who followed behind, couldn't help but burst out laughing. The landlord felt he had lost face and was about to explode. It suddenly met my eyes. It was a gaze that was fierce and bone-chilling, like a silent stray dog that rarely barks on the street, making him shiver with a cold chill. He had thought I was just someone who bullied family but was cowardly outside, which is why he dared to come to the door to bully my sister. But my appearance now made him feel a bit afraid. His intimidating aura immediately dropped by 30%, but his mouth was still stubborn. Bye, Muji, you little brat. I'll wait 2 more days. If I don't see the money, then you can go sleep on the street together. No need to wait. I interrupted him and took out my phone, immediately transferring 1,200 yuan, not a single cent short for the rent. Then I took a step forward, using a threatening tone to warn him. From now on, I will pay the rent on time. But if you ever dare to take advantage of when I'm not home to come over here and bully my sister, then don't blame me if these fists are merciless. The landlord received the money, and only then did he mutter some curses and leave. Ya Qingyan breathed a sigh of relief and softly asked me, Appa, where did this money come from? I pointed towards Zhao Chen. I borrowed it from a friend. Ya Qingyan hurriedly said to Zhao Chen, Thank you so much. Zhao Chen gave me a meaningful smile, then whispered, Muji, it seems your little kitten has grown up quite a bit. I gave a forced, awkward laugh. Ya Qingyan mustered up her courage and spoke. Maybe, would you like to stay and have dinner with us? Zhao Chen hurriedly waved his hand. No, I can't. I have to go back to work overtime. Muga, get some good rest. Because I was so exhausted, I didn't even notice that today. Ya Qingyan was talking much more than usual. I lazily waved goodbye to Zhao Chen and turned to tell her, it's done. Let's go inside and eat. Ya Qingyan nodded, but a feeling she had never felt before surged within her heart. I dragged my worn-out body and plopped down at the table, feeling as though every bone in my body had been disassembled and put back together. Actually, I usually like eating noodles in the evening, but ironically, the original owner of this body only liked sipping porridge, so only a single bowl of plain white porridge was on the table. I just wanted to eat quickly and be done with it, but the moment I picked up the bowl, my arms were trembling like leaves in the wind, to the point I couldn't even hold the bowl steady. The next second, the bowl slipped with a loud clang, hot porridge splashing all over the table. I thought Ya Qingyan would be frightened, but unexpectedly she stood up immediately. Let me get you another bowl, Oppa. It'll wipe the table in a bit. I was suddenly stunned, because her voice no longer held that cowering, cautious tone from before, but was instead a bit more natural. I nodded, watching her walk quickly into the kitchen, but the moment she turned away, I couldn't hold on any longer. My eyelids felt like lead, my head tilted back, and I simply collapsed on the chair and fell fast asleep. I didn't even have time to see Ya Qingyan returning with a fresh bowl of porridge, seeing someone with a deathly pale face, hair matted with sweat, even his shirt encrusted with a layer of dried salt. She just stood there silently holding the bowl of porridge. Then, looking at my sleeping face, a smile suddenly appeared on her lips that no one could truly fathom. It seemed she was curious about what kind of person I used to be and how I ended up here. By the time I woke up, I found myself lying on the bed in the bedroom. The corner of a blanket was neatly tucked over my navel. If they say only one leaf remained in the world, then that leaf would surely be found on the navel of a person from Susha. But I was a little puzzled. I clearly fell asleep on the chair yesterday, so how did I get to bed? There were only Ya Qingyan and I in the house. If I didn't crawl up here myself, did Ya Qingyan support me and bring me in? I scratched my head, thinking to myself, could that girl really be that kind? Suddenly it hit me. She must be afraid I'll hit her when I wake up.
So she's trying to get on my good side like this. I turned over to get out of bed, and my entire body ached as if I'd been run over by a tractor. The bottle of medicinal wine Brother Chang gave me was still in my pocket, but I was in too much pain to even apply it. So I slowly dragged myself out of the room, only to find the living room dead silent. White porridge and steamed buns were already set on the dining table, but Ya Qingyan was nowhere to be found. Did she run into the landlady again? My heart tightened. After all, she's not very good with words. If she gets bullied, what will happen? I shouted as loud as I could. Ya Qingyan, are you home? No one answered in the house. Looking down, only the snow-white slippers were left at the entrance, while her cloth shoes were gone. This girl actually dared to sneak out behind my back. Just as I was about to sit down at the table, there was a sound outside the door. Ya Qingyan walked in carrying a plastic bag. I immediately darkened my expression, pretending to be fierce as I glared at her. Where did you go? She was so scared she trembled, lowering her head and whispering. I went to buy groceries. Then, as if gathering all her courage, she added softly, Appa, you were tired yesterday, so don't go out today. I'll cook a stir-fry for you at noon. I stood frozen in place. How could her tone carry such indescribable gentleness? Is she provoking me? I immediately widened my eyes, trying to hide the strange feeling in my heart. Do you dare to lecture me now? Ya Qingyan shrank back into the plastic bag, looking frail and innocent. No, I didn't. I gave a cold laugh, my tone becoming even more arrogant. I see you haven't been beaten for a few days, so your guts have grown bigger. But after observing her for a while, I saw that besides being afraid, there was nothing unusual about her. It seems I was just being paranoid. I cleared my throat, a gaze sharp. Do you remember my requirement? Ya Qingyan nodded obediently. Yes, I must study hard. I raised my fist with satisfaction. Since I'm home, I'll personally check your studies later. If you haven't memorized it, do you see this fist as big as a sandbag? She was so frightened that she clutched the hem of her shirt like a terrified quail. I didn't bother with her anymore and went back to finish the breakfast on the table. My whole body ached so much I couldn't lift the bowl, so I had to place the bowl on the table, bending down to slurp it up like a puppy. Wherever I couldn't reach, I'd stick my tongue out to lick it, until I realized Ya Qingyan was still standing there watching me. Immediately flared up. Aren't you going to scurry into your room to study? Are you waiting for an invitation? She hurriedly said yes, tucking her neck and running off to the bedroom. I saw Ya Qingyan's shoulders shaking as she closed the door, and a hint of regret suddenly rose in my heart. Did I speak too harshly just now, and that poor girl cry? Little did I know that behind the door she wasn't crying at all, but was instead almost bursting into laughter, because the way I was sprawled on the table licking the bowl, like a little golden retriever just now, was truly beyond hilarious. She stared into the mirror, her face gradually brightening, noticing that even her previous wounds had already begun to scab over. It seemed that life really was about to get better. At the same time, I was hiding in the bathroom, grimacing from the heat of that powerful medicinal wine. This burning sensation truly felt like it was going to kill me, but as the medicine soaked into my skin, the soreness throughout my body finally began to fade. I changed my clothes and sprawled out on the sofa, waving my hand and shouting, Have you memorized it? Bring it here for me to check. Ya Qingyan obediently walked out with her book, her voice as clear as morning dew on bamboo leaves. But as she read the line about drifting together like duckweed, being a guest in a foreign land, my heart suddenly tightened. That feeling of helpless loneliness within this transmigrated timeline really pierced right through my heart. I secretly cursed the former owner of this body. He really was a piece of trash. Such a pleasant voice used to force her to use it only for crying. If I could hear it every day instead, just listening to her read would be a treat. Just then, she suddenly looked up and stared at me, her gaze full of scrutiny. Appa, what does the word who mean? I gave a cold snort. Who means a swan goose? Who is just a lonely wild swan? You don't even know that. Haven't you even learned simple idioms yet? I didn't even realize it, but Ya Qingyan's eyes suddenly lit up with astonishment. I should have known. That former trashy thug could barely recognize a few words, let alone answer so fluently. In that moment, I had exposed a fatal flaw, but I still acted as if nothing had happened, urging her to continue reading. Soon after, the lesson ended, and the silence was so deep that even the cicadas seemed to stop buzzing. I looked at her frail petite figure, secretly calculating something in my mind. While she looked at me, an astonishing theory had already begun to form in her head. I cleared my throat, expressing my awkwardness as I turned away, muttering dryly, You memorized it well. Beneath her long, cascading hair, a barely perceptible smile appeared on her lips. My heart suddenly stirred,
feeling that I should give her some kind of reward.
You only bought vegetables this morning. Less than greater than. You did well today. Less than greater than. So it will make a delicious dish for you at lunch. Less than greater than. I raised an eyebrow and asked tentatively, how about braised pork? Ya Qingyan's eyes sparkled, her voice carrying just the right amount of hesitation. But, we're out of money. I didn't tell you to pay for it. I waved my hand, pressing the body-wide ache as I slowly stood up to go out. Suddenly, she called out, Oppa, wait. I turned my head back. She whispered, I'm so tired from studying. Can I go with you? My heart skipped a beat. The refusal rose to my throat, but I swallowed it back down, unable to voice it. All right. Facing those pitiful eyes, I finally couldn't bear to say no. Let's go. I muttered 2 dry words. Inside, she was overjoyed, thinking, hee, I've got your number now. As long as I act pitiful, Oppa can never refuse me. The moment she stepped out of the door, she still felt like it was all a dream. She could actually go out with him openly and even go grocery shopping together. Those miserable days from before were finally over. Her devilish brother had been replaced by a soul from the future. Her future was gradually becoming brighter. But a second later, intense self-doubt overwhelmed her. She was just a lonely wild swan that no one wanted. Did she really deserve this sudden kindness? She lost herself in these wandering thoughts, silently bowing her head and following behind me, heading toward the bustling market. The market was noisy and lively, chaotic and crowded. She was all too familiar with this place, where every day she had to count every penny just to save whatever she could. But just then a fashionable girl spoke in a coquettish voice to the guy beside her. Oppa, I feel like eating fish. Can we buy this one? The guy smiled dotingly. Of course. Let's get this grass carp then. Ya Qingyan's eyes suddenly dimmed as she lowered her head and walked on. The two reached the pork stall, and the greasy, fat owner recognized her immediately. Oh hey, it's been a long time since I've seen you buying meat, little girl. Ya Qingyan gave an awkward smile, and the owner's eyes shifted to me, full of suspicion. Have you found yourself a boyfriend? This girl used to come all alone. He already knew very well that she had a deadbeat gambler for a brother. Seeing someone with her now, the owner guessed she must have found some tough guy to deal with her brother. He felt a bit regretful. She's such a good girl. Why would she choose someone like this as a boyfriend? Ya Qingyan's face turned bright red as she hurriedly waved her hands. No, that's not it at all. The fat owner didn't listen, giving his hand, nothing to be shy about. That scumbag brother of yours. It's about time someone taught him a lesson. This guy might look a bit strange, but he stands straight, doesn't look like the dishonest type. He's built well too, perfect for dealing with your brother. The veins on my forehead throbbed. I couldn't hold back anymore. I pointed at a piece of pork belly, telling the owner expressionlessly, give me this piece. The fat owner chuckled as he cut the meat, his mouth never stopping. All right, I'll cut a little extra for you. That girl's brother is a nasty one, you should eat more, so you don't lose when you fight him. I finally exploded, coldly interrupting. I am her brother, the very scumbag you were just talking about. The fat owner's hand holding the knife didn't even tremble for a second. He rolled his eye, instantly changed his attitude, smiling even more brightly. See, what did I tell you? Seeing is believing. The fat owner's face flipped faster than a pancake. As he grinned, I knew right away this young man looked promising. Hearing these words, his face felt hot with embarrassment. While Ya Qingyan stood by my side, her shoulders starting to tremble slightly. She was actually trying to suppress her laughter. I didn't bother with the owner's sudden shift. I had only planned to buy pork belly at first. Looking at the fresh food on the stall, and then glancing at the skinny as a leaf Ya Qingyan beside me, I immediately went into a shopping frenzy. There wasn't much left after paying the rent anyway, so I might as well have a good meal. If the money runs out, I'll just find more tomorrow. Just like that, more and more bags piled into my hands. Less than greater than. Almost enough to strain my arms. Less than greater than. On the way back, less than greater than. Ya Qingyan's soft voice rang out, less than greater than. Let me help you carry those, Oppa. Less than greater than. I suppressed my aches, less than greater than. Giving her a glare. Who are you looking down on? Less than greater than. I don't need your help. She was about to insist, and I suddenly pulled her back sharply. She stumbled, not yet understanding what was happening, only to find me shielding her with my arm. A second later, a delivery guy on an e-bike whizzed by right next to her without even bothering to look back. My hands still trembling, I let her go, hurriedly checking. Are you hurt? Ya Qingyan was stunned, and in her eyes as she looked at me, a surge of indescribable warmth suddenly arose. I snorted coldly, watching the bike disappear in the distance, cursing loudly. It's lucky he ran off so fast, less than greater than. Otherwise, I definitely would have taught him a lesson. Less than greater than. She even spoke up to defend him. Less than greater than. Saying he must have been in a hurry. Less than greater than. I was furious, the road was so wide. Less than greater than.
Yet he chose to dive right in like that. It was clearly deliberate negligence. Ya Qingyan lowered her head and stayed silent. Waves of emotion were crashing in her heart. That strange feeling of warmth mixed with a bit of heartache was quietly spreading through her entire heart. I actually got angry on her behalf, and I even went all out to protect her. This was a far cry from the scumbag she knew before. If it were in the past, she would only have been scolded or even beaten. She quietly followed behind me, stepping lightly on my shadow. In that moment, shadows of the two seemed to be tightly entwined. Near the stairs, I really couldn't take it anymore. Unable to hold back a couple of small coughs, I handed her the lightest bag. Go up and wash the vegetables first. I need to make a phone call. It wasn't until the door slammed shut that I finally dared to breathe a sigh of relief. Immediately after, I let my true state show, my legs spread out, walking sideways, like a large crab crawling slowly, shuffling up the stairs step by step. I had no choice. My legs, smeared with medicinal wine, were in agonizing pain, less than greater than, especially when I had to lift them. Less than greater than. I thought no one was around less than greater than, so I crawled sideways and shuffled back, looking beyond ridiculous. But I had no idea Ya Qingyan was hiding behind the door crack, witnessing the entire spectacle. I pushed the door open and walked in, finding the door slightly ajar, thinking to myself, is she really that thoughtful? Fearing it'd be hard for me to open the door with all these bags, so she left it open. If all these bags, less than greater than, so she left it open for me. Less than greater than. I nodded slightly. Less than greater than, thinking she actually knew how to care for someone. Less than greater than. Upon entering the kitchen, I snatched the vegetables from her hand, pushing her out. With your poor skills, go somewhere else and read your books. When I started, I gave it my all, applying all my skills from back in the day. Sweet and sour ribs, crispy fried pork, steamed fish, garlic shrimp. My movements were swift and precise. My nice skills in pan tossing were so skillful, they looked like something out of a movie. Ya Qingyan stood nearby, looking on in utter amazement. With such a huge contrast, didn't I realize I was exposing my flaws? However, I remained completely unaware, feeling smug as I thought, I'm only using 60% of my power. This is more than enough to fool her. Ya Qingyan's cooking skills were truly terrible. Food she prepared could even rival the old lady from the orphanage years ago. That old lady was very kind indeed, but she was a real nutrition fanatic, never using a single grain of salt when cooking, always saying it was to prevent high blood pressure. In the orphanage, the oldest kid was only 16. It really was way too early for health regimens. It was for that very reason that in my past life, I devoted myself to studying cooking. Right now, while busy in the kitchen, I was also racking my brain to hide my slip-ups. I just picked up a few tricks recently. Cooking this bunch of stuff took no small amount of effort. I slammed the table, deliberately acting like a menacing demon. Even if it's not good, you have to eat it all. Less than greater than. Otherwise, you're showing me no respect. Less than greater than. I habitually raise my fist. Less than greater than. You know what the consequences of disrespecting me are, right? Less than greater than. Ya Qingyan shrank back in fear. Less than greater than. Bowing her head and murmuring her obedience. In my heart, I was smug, thinking my acting skills were perfect. But little did I know she was glancing at the tuft of hair sticking up on my head, secretly laughing at my naive acting, wondering how much longer I could keep it up. If Oppo wants to put on a play, then I'll just have to play along with him. Ever since her foster parents passed away, this was the first time she'd eaten so many meat dishes. The sweet and sour ribs were so tender they fell off the bone. The crispy fried pork had the perfect balance of sweet and sour, and the steamed fish was incomparably fresh. Watching her gobble it down like a whirlwind, to the point her small belly became slightly rounded, I was actually secretly adjusting the amount of food. Seeing her eating so happily, I actively slowed my own eating. By the time the dishes on the table were licked clean, Ya Qingyan contentedly ran off to wash the dishes. I sprawled out on the sofa, my mind already drifting toward the future. Ya Qingyan was about to enter the 11th grade, and the tuition for one semester was over 3,000 yuan. This amount for me right now was truly a massive burden. This body had only graduated from middle school, and in a city full of talent like Donghai, finding a stable job was harder than climbing to heaven. Working as a delivery driver was too competitive, and manual labor wouldn't last forever. I weighed my options carefully and decided to try my luck at the food street tomorrow. With my solid cooking skills, even if I had to start as a kitchen assistant, there would surely be an opportunity to change my life. With a plan in mind, only then did I feel exhaustion wash over me as I lay on the bed and fell into a deep sleep. The summer cicada buzzed incessantly, while in the next room, Ya Qingyan, having eaten so much, also felt drowsiness immediately take hold. While dreaming, she felt as if she'd returned to when she was 8, the most carefree time of her life. Mother sat at the head of the bed, her eyes curved in a smile less than greater than, her kind smile like a refreshing clear stream. Less than greater than. Mom, is a name just a symbol? Less than greater than. Gu Qingying smiled and stroked her head, Less than greater than. Her voice gentle. Less than greater than. But Ya Qingyin didn't know then, less than greater than, that the meaning hidden behind each name was far weightier than just a simple symbol. It turns out a name isn't just a title, but also carries all the expectations and lifelong blessings of one's parents. Ya Qingyin lay curled on the bed in the rented house, recalling the words her mother once tenderly told her. Learn to use your ears, to listen to all the beautiful things in the world. Now rubbing her small, full belly, she thought that perhaps this was the happiness her mother spoke of. Tears still flowed, soaking her pillow. I slept straight through, losing track of everything, and when I woke up, it was already 4 p.m. To my surprise, the house was empty, without a soul in sight. My heart skipped a beat. Could this girl have disobeyed again and run off to collect scrap metal? I anxiously shouted, Ya Qingyin, are you home? A moment later, the bathroom door opened. She timidly stepped out, clutching a math textbook. Her face was etched with a deep, paralyzing fear. Seeing that she wasn't rummaging through the trash, the crushing weight upon my heart finally lifted. With a stern expression, I told her she must focus on her studies. Early the next morning, driven by the need for that 3,000 yuan tuition, I hopped on my motorcycle and headed straight for the food street, a place teeming with all walks of life. At the most famous snail noodle shop around here, people were forming an endless line in front of the door, their business so prosperous it would make anyone envious. I went from one eatery to another asking for work, but I was met with nothing but cold rejections. They simply weren't short on staff. Just as I was beginning to lose hope, I stumbled upon a small shop that was in utter chaos. Inside, the customers were shouting and demanding their food. The proprietress, dressed in a graceful green silk dress, was drenched in sweat, running around trying to appease the guests, looking as though she was at her breaking point. My eyes flickered with resolve and I strode right inside. Nuna, are you hiring a chef or a kitchen assistant? The lady, overwhelmed with work, glanced back to size me up. Do you have experience? I don't harbor useless idlers here. I puffed out my chest, answering confidently, I've been a chef for 3 years. I guarantee I can start immediately. In truth, I knew exactly what I was doing. The skills I honed during my work-study days in my previous life were my ultimate trump card to rewrite my destiny now. Whether I could land this job or not depended entirely on the performance I was about to give. When I said I've been a chef for 3 years, less than greater than, it wasn't actually a lie. Less than greater than. The anxiety in the lady's eyes suddenly vanished, replaced by hope. Less than greater than. Swaying her hips, she led me straight to the back kitchen. Who would have thought that the moment I stepped in, the fat chef Lao Wu would greet me with a sneer. This kid looks exactly like a common thug. Boss, you're not just messing around, are you? I didn't waste any words, speaking only in the language of the trade. Master Wu, this braised fish is taking too long. How about I show you my fish-fragrant shredded pork instead? Lao Wu's hands hesitated for a beat, feeling a surge of secret astonishment. Though fish-fragrant pork is a common dish, it's the ultimate test of one's ability to balance the 5 flavors. It turned out this kid was actually a pro. Right after that, Lao Wu pointed to an old iron wok that had been cast aside for a month. Without flinching, I lifted the wok and placed it over a high flame. Instantly, the fire flared up violently, heating the wok until red to burn off the residue. Seasoning, stir-frying, deglazing, every single movement was as smooth as flowing water and drifting clouds. Not a single motion was wasted. Lao Wu stared in absolute disbelief. He immediately declared, Boss, this is the one. The boss felt a wave of relief wash over her, beaming with a wide smile. Work hard. I'll make sure your salary is more than fair. Then, in that kitchen sweltering like a hellish furnace, I poured my soul into working for 3 straight hours. By 2 p.m., I finally collapsed onto the steps outside the door. My clothes were so soaked I could have wrung them out. Lao Wu casually offered me a cigarette, but I waved it away instantly. I refused him seriously. I have a kitten at home. She has the most beautiful voice, and I'm afraid the smoke might ruin it. Lao Wu looked at me with a face full of shock, probably thinking I had a screw loose. He took a long drag of his cigarette, laughing as he teased, a guy like you, willing to be a slave to a cat. I could only scratch my head and give a gentle smile, but my heart was filled with longing. She is the girl with a voice more serene than anything in this world, my precious little sister. I had just showcased my incredible culinary skills in the kitchen. Unexpectedly, Lao Wu took 2 deep puffs of his cigarette and with a darkened expression, advised me to leave quickly. He said bluntly that this place wasn't right for me. I refused with a half-joking tone. After all, my pockets were empty. I didn't even have the money to take the chef's certification exam. Seeing my unwavering resolve, Lao Wu started to say something but held back. In the end, he could only let out a long, meaningful sigh. Shortly after, I went to the boss who was doing calculations at the front desk, deliberately avoiding eye contact with the obvious scar on her chest to ask about my compensation. I couldn't believe that in a city like Donghai, even as the head chef, my monthly salary would only be a mere 5,000 yuan. But just to make ends meet, not only did I not complain about the low pay, I actually offered a sincere apology. Just then, the girl at the front desk, Song Ting, handed me a bottle of Coke with a smile to congratulate me, and even took the initiative to ask for my WeChat. The boss face darkened instantly as she stood up, shouting at us to get back to work immediately. Song Ting shrunk back in fear, playfully sticking out her tongue. In that moment, I made a silent vow to save up money as quickly as possible, to buy my little girl a mobile phone, so that if she ever feels wronged or in trouble, she won't be unable to make a single call for help. It wasn't until 11:30 p.m. that I made my way home through the dark night. Opening the door, I found Ya Qingyan curled up and fast asleep on the sofa. Hearing the noise, she jerked awake,
her eyes filled with an undeniable, haunting fear. "Just with my footstep," she asked tremblingly. "Oppa, did you go gambling again?" I gave a small smirk, answering bluntly, "I went to do some honest work." Ya Qingyan froze in place, the panic in her eyes instantly replaced by pure astonishment. Then, I handed her the bottle of Coke I hadn't the heart to drink, placing it in her hands while pretending to complain it was too sweet. Ya Qingyan received it gingerly, watching my back as I walked into my room. A quiet smile finally bloomed on her lips, accompanied by the soft hiss of the bubbles. That long-lost sweetness began to seep, drop by drop, into the depths of her heart. In my previous life, every time I came home, I was too exhausted to even speak. But now, even though my body was aching all over, my soul felt a sense of fulfillment I had never known. The night breeze blew through the window, gently ruffling her long hair. When I came out with clean clothes, Ya Qingyan had already returned to her room and closed the door. I stood before Ya Qingyan's door, overwhelmed by a truly strange sensation. In my past life, coming home meant being utterly drained, unable to take another step, unable to utter another word. Yet now, though I am exhausted, I feel so incredibly whole, and my body is surging with newfound motivation. I leaned silently against the wall, pondered for a moment, then shook my head and headed to the bathroom. Because of the person she always had to be on guard against, Ya Qingyan's sleep was never peaceful. It was always very late before she could drift off. She heard me in the next room, settling in for the night. I flopped onto the hard wooden bed with a loud thud. Ouch! I let out a soft cry from the other room. Ya Qingyan gave a small smile, thinking that the bed I used to sleep on couldn't have been this hard. At least it would have had a mattress. The soundproofing in this room was terrible. Soft snoring soon drifted in from next door. Ya Qingyan turned over, clutching her blanket tight, whispering, "Mom, please come visit me in my dreams. It's been so long since you last came to see me." The next day's sunlight spilled brightly across the breakfast table. I watched Ya Qingyan diligently studying vocabulary, her slender silhouette bathed in golden rays, so beautiful it made my heart ache. Before leaving, I purposely spoke louder, telling her over and over to eat on time, and absolutely not to wander off anywhere. Ya Qingyan nodded obediently on the surface, yet as soon as I revved the engine and disappeared into the crowd, she hid behind the curtain, silently watching me, softly praying for my safe return. After that, I braved the scorching early sun to arrive at the restaurant early. Lao Wu stared intently at my shoes. They were easy targets for hot oil splatters. He frowned, advising me to quickly change my appearance to look more professional. I could only give a self-deprecating laugh, confessing that my pockets were cleaner than my face right now. Where would I get the extra cash for equipment? But unexpectedly, after Lao Wu was silent for a moment, he made a suggestion that went against all professional rules. He told me to work for just 3 days and then go straight to the boss to demand my pay. I stood there completely bewildered because in this city of Donghai, wages are never paid outside of a monthly schedule. Lao Wu looked me in the eye and warned, "Just do as I say, less than greater than. I definitely won't steer you wrong. Less than greater than. But when you ask for the money, don't you dare mention me. Less than greater than." Though filled with doubt, I nodded in agreement. Less than greater than. Secretly, I calculated, less than greater than. That once I got my pay, I must less than greater than buy this old man a few packs of high-quality cigarettes. In response, Lao Wu only gave a profound smile, a smile that radiated a strangeness I couldn't quite grasp. Just then, the seductive boss, Cheese Yume, leisurely walked into the shop. A thin pink silk dress clung tightly to her figure, highlighting her incredibly fiery curves. Even Lao Wu's gaze couldn't help but steal a glance over there. I lowered my voice, teasing, "Master Wu, I didn't know you liked this type." Lao Wu's face turned red as he feigned anger, scolding, "You youngsters don't know the charm of a mature woman. What the hell do you know, you brat?" But much to my surprise, Cheese Yume walked straight toward me. She watched the incredible rhythm of the knife in my hand, probing, "Have you had professional culinary training?" In my mind, there instantly appeared the image of my talented but ill-fated mentor from my past life.
My hands didn't stop moving for a second. I've studied under a master. Chizuyume's eyes lit up, and she immediately requests some high-end dishes that could be sold at a premium. After thinking for a moment, I blurted out a name: tofu skin beef rolls with shrimp balls. Chizuyume was stunned when she heard the dish's name. When I quoted a price of 100 yuan per serving, her eyes widened in shock. Most expensive dish is only 80 yuan. You're not joking, are you? I didn't back down, instead calmly analyzed that the market price in hotels is at least 200 yuan, less than. Even clearly calculating that the cost ratio is only about 35%, less than. Lao Wu stood nearby with a grim face, less than, constantly using the increased workload as an excuse to pour cold water on the idea. Chizuyume looked at my confident face, hesitating. Little Mu, can you actually do this? My lips curled. A man can never say he can't. Just leave it to me. So the boss made the call, giving me a one-day trial. She even promised that if the results were good, there would be a bonus this month. In that moment, I noticed that when Lao Wu heard the word bonus, his brow furrowed in a sudden, unpleasant way. Next, the lunch rush became unimaginably crowded. Not only was the shop packed instantly, but a line longer than ever before formed outside. I thought today's revenue was a sure thing, because Chizuyume's thin pink dress was so seductive that customers just wanted to steal a few more glances at that deep cleavage and frantically ordered my signature tofu skin rolls. However, a major crisis suddenly erupted at that very moment. Lao Wu, for some unknown reason, began to slack off, working listlessly. Ignoring the long queue outside, he remained leisurely and slow, and then the server caused another massive problem. They brought out the plain white rice before any of the dishes. In the restaurant business, serving plain rice alone is a blatant insult, equivalent to kicking them out. Sure enough, a burly, aggressive man immediately flipped the table, and his shouting instantly echoed through the entire shop. Lao Wu intended to grab a kitchen knife and act tough, but as soon as he saw the murderous look in the other's eyes, less than greater than, he cowardly shrunk back and slipped into the back kitchen. Less than greater than. At the critical moment, it still fell on me. Less than greater than. I decisively abandoned the complex signature dishes using both woks simultaneously, turning the heat up to the maximum. My skillful tossing of the woks, almost like a dance, left Chizuyume staring in awe. This technique was truly like a god of cookery descending. Unexpectedly, just as the dish was served, a blood-curdling scream suddenly rang out from outside. That dark-faced man named King Ji actually dared, right in the middle of the crowd, to smack Chizuyume's bottom. He gave a cold laugh and forced my boss into a chair, commanding her to drink with him. His lackeys nearby even kicked over chairs, their eyes filled with malice, standing ready to trash the shop if they weren't obeyed. The customers nearby wanted to step in to help, but were held back by their friends. Don't touch them, those are Sun Hao's men. Sun Hao, the one who took advantage of the Bai family's downfall, to aggressively seize territories, a real ruthless thug. In an instant, the entire restaurant fell into a silence so profound, you could hear a pin drop. No one dared to step up and invite disaster. Seeing Chizuyume push into a corner, I set down the wok, intending to rush out. Master Wu grabbed me firmly, hissing in a low voice. Don't go throw your life away. Do you even know who's out there? I coldly shook off his hand. The boss hired me. Song Ting treated me to a Coke. I have to act. As for who was outside, I couldn't care less. I strode out with my head held high, casually carrying a beer bottle. Chingy's lackey squinted at me, looking at my worn-out, tattered clothes with a face full of contempt. Where did this wet behind the ears brat come from? My expression remained blank as my right hand suddenly stiffened like a blade, and I delivered a powerful chop to the bottle cap. With a sharp crack, the cap went flying. This move instantly commanded the room, and even Chingy had to take a second look. Yet I didn't stop there, thrusting the entire bottle into my mouth. With a sudden burst of power from my wrist, a violent whirlpool of beer instantly surged inside the bottle. I dared to perform a tornado chug right in front of them. In just a few seconds, not a single drop remained in the bottle. Next, I grabbed a second bottle, my entire body radiating a murderous aura that chilled the bone. Chingy's eyes shifted slightly as he stared intently at the calluses on my hands. This old fox heart suddenly skipped a beat, less than greater than. Convinced that I wasn't just some street brawler, less than greater than, but a desperate man with nothing to lose. He took a sip of his drink, tacitly acknowledging my display of defiance. Nevertheless, I stood tall with my back straight, my gaze eerily calm. The aura emanating from my very core made these seasoned gangsters, who had spent years in the underworld, feel a shiver run down their spines. It took me 10 seconds to finish the third bottle, and just as I was about to reach for a fourth, a lackey stopped me. That's enough, kid. There's no future in being a chef. Why not come work for our boss Hao instead? Shut up! Chinga barked a command, frightening the lackey so much he immediately shrunk back. I was secretly surprised as well. Could the boss Hao he mentioned be the same Sun Hao who once wanted me to be his debt collector? Before I could process it, Qingge actually paid the full bill and swaggered out with his men.
The crisis was finally over. In the days that followed, business boomed incredibly. Not only did Lao Wu work his heart out, but the dishes I made with my own hand were in such high demand, customers were fighting over them. Revenue instantly doubled. Unfortunately, due to the non-stop work, the 40-degree heat caused Lao Wu to suffer from heat stroke. I could only grit my teeth and carry the burden, doing the work of 2 people, all by myself. For 10 hours, I was so busy my feet barely touched the ground and my shirt was soon drenched in sweat. I didn't even have time for a bathroom break. Somehow, I held on until 10 p.m. when Lao Wu told me to go quickly to Cheese Yume to settle my wages for the past 3 days. At this time, Cheese Yume was leaning over the counter doing calculations, her dress highlighting her seductive curves. I stepped forward, and to speak politely, "Sismay, could you give me an advance on my wages for the last 3 days?" Instead, Cheese Yume turned around, with a strange smile playing on her face. "Wages? What wages?" I stood there frozen, still thinking she was just joking. I emphasized that I had worked for 3 full days, only for her to let out a mock laugh, her gaze suddenly becoming cold and distant. "I never signed any contract with you. You were the one who insisted on helping out in the kitchen, so why on earth should I pay you?" A cold chill shot from the soles of my feet to the top of my head. At that moment, it finally dawned that this seemingly flirtatious woman intended to swindle me out of my hard-earned labor. I had worked myself to the bone for 3 straight days, only for the boss to go back on her word the second it was time to pay. Where's the contract? Where's the proof? Without papers, why should I give you a single cent? Cheese Yume laughed so hard her entire body shook, less than greater than. Even having the audacity to tell me less than greater than. That the last 3 days were actually her giving me lessons. I immediately understood what was going on. No wonder Lao Wu had been avoiding my gaze earlier. It turned out this woman had intended from the very beginning to exploit my labor for absolutely nothing. Thinking of the 3 bottles of beer I chugged to save her, and the revenue that skyrocketed over the past 2 days, the fire of rage in my chest could no longer be suppressed. I pointed straight at her nose and started scolding her. Cheese Yume's fake face instantly contorted with anger. Then the cousin working as a server, wanting to suck up to her, threw down his rag and lunged to slap me. I could have easily avoided that slap, but I deliberately took the hit. "You're the one who struck first, and I'm just acting in self-defense." I smirked, a fierce expression making him tremble. Before he could react, I launched a counterattack, an incredibly powerful uppercut to his stomach, knocking him down until he curled up like a shrimp on the floor. Cheese Yume frantically rushed to push me, but I casually delivered a stinging slap to her face, leaving her ears ringing. Incredibly, she still dared to glare at me, so I followed up with another slap, sending her staggering backward. Seeing another server charge at me with a broom, I took on both of them without flinching. My years of street fighting experience let me strike both quickly and accurately. I pinned Cheese Yume's cousin down, delivering a barrage of punches to his vital points, beating him until he wailed for his parents and begged for help. The boss who was so smug just moments ago was now sitting on the floor, less than greater than. Her entire body trembling with fear, less than greater than. Just as everything reached its peak of chaos, the sudden wailing siren of a police car approached from the distance. In the interrogation room, the officer looked at Cheese Yume, who actually had the nerve to point right at me, insisting that I was the one who started the fight, claiming that all 3 of them were assaulted by me alone. I gave a cold laugh internally, but on the outside I feigned distress and nodded repeatedly, deliberately saying I felt dizzy, lightheaded, and nauseous. That slap almost gave me a concussion. I even asked them who knew what would have happened if it had been hit again. The officer watched the 2 of us perform our act and immediately ordered the surveillance footage to be pulled. I knew I had already won because I had spent years on the street and was well-versed in these tactics. Sure enough, the camera footage was rock-solid evidence. The male server was clearly the one who slapped me first, and Cheese Yume was also directly pushing me. They were undeniably the ones who started the violence. I immediately became extremely confident, continuing to moan and clutch where I had been hit, complaining of nausea. I even demanded a medical evaluation for my injuries, suspecting I had a concussion, and requested to file criminal charges. My face was pale, my expression haggard. My acting skills were at their absolute peak. The officer gave me a meaningful look, then turned and told them to settle it among ST themselves. Cheese Yume lost her nerve as soon as she heard that. She had originally intended to cheat me out of 3 days' wages, but now she was the one who had initiated the assault, less than greater than. She was completely in the wrong. Less than greater than. She reluctantly uttered, "Fine. Less than greater than. I don't want any more trouble with you. Less than greater than. I'll give you 500 yuan. 500 yuan. Less than greater than." I spread my 5 fingers and waved them in her face, less than greater than, giving a cold laugh. 5,000. Less than greater than. You're a real shark,
aren't you? Chi Shumei exploded in anger. I feign another urge to vomit and collapse weakly onto the floor. I need to go to the clinic. I'm sure I have a concussion. She never could have imagined that during a fight I was as fierce as a wolf, yet when it came to acting, I was no different from a top-tier movie star. Just as her hands were shaking with rage, less than greater than, her phone suddenly rang. Less than greater than. She answered it. Less than greater than. And on the other end was Lao Wu's panicked voice. Boss. Less than greater than. This is bad. Less than greater than. Someone smeared rotten durian all over the front of the shop. The stench is absolutely lethal. Chi Shumei immediately glared at me with pure malice, roaring. Was this your doing? I put on an innocent face, weakly countering. The heavens are watching and society has laws. Do you have proof? Officer, I want to sue her for defamation. Meanwhile, on the other end, Lao Wu was still desperately shouting that if more waste was dumped tomorrow, their business would be completely finished. Chi Shumei was so angry she nearly coughed up blood, finally begrudgingly transferring 3,500 yuan to me. In her heart, she must have been green with regret. The first time she tried to cheat someone, she had suffered such a painful fall. Having received the money, I was immediately revitalized, profusely apologizing to the officers, even feigning a sincere promise in the future, no matter what happened, I would absolutely not be so impulsive again before leaving the station. I hailed a taxi and rode off swaggeringly, as if none of that had ever even happened. However, what I didn't know at all was that some things had only just begun. I stepped out of the police station and promptly made a call to Song Siwen. It's done. Meng Zi, everything's taken care of. Pull the men back. Then I scanned a QR code for a public bike. I strolled back to the alley behind the restaurant to retrieve my motorcycle. I sat on the seat and conveniently transferred 500 yuan to Song Siwan as a reward for his help won to Song Siwan, as a reward for his hard work today. I knew deep down, if that boss was heartless, then she shouldn't blame me for being ruthless. When civilized methods don't work, I'll resort to the tricks of a rogue. Even without Song Siwan's help, I could have gotten the money back by being stubborn for a few days. But I insisted on finding him, actually looking for a subtle way to give him some food money. I was just afraid this kid would starve himself to death. Unexpectedly, Song Siwan immediately called back via video, showing a very joyful face on the screen. His bald head leaned close to the lens and shouted "Big Brother" at me, completely ignoring the looks as if he were a fool from the people sitting and browsing the internet nearby. I scolded him irritably. You've already slipped into the internet cafe. Go get a meal since you have the money. Be decent. Don't always think about buying random things. Stop watching those trashy movies. Song Siwan chuckled. I got it, Brother Moo. Empower leveling here. Getting to play and making money at the same time. After hanging up, I started the motorcycle and headed straight home. It was 2 a.m. when I got back. I thought Yak Shingen was already fast asleep, so I deliberately stepped lightly, tiptoeing up to the second floor. The moment I pushed the door open, the expected darkness did not appear. Warm yellow light filled the space. In the living room, Yak Shingen, wearing an old dress, was quietly sitting on the sofa reading a book. I suddenly froze, instinctively blurting out, "Why aren't you asleep yet?" "Because you hadn't come home yet." She closed the book, her voice as light as a breeze. Immediately after, I felt her gaze sweep across my face. In that moment, a strange sense of guilt rose in my heart. After all, it was 1 against 3 tonight. My face must be bruised and battered right now, looking utterly pathetic. All sorts of thoughts couldn't help but pop into my head. Would she think? I'm still the same scumbag who only knows how to fight. Is she feeling afraid? A deathly silence fell over the living room. A surge of groundless irritation suddenly rose within me. It's so strange. Why should I care about her opinion? I just need to support her until she finishes university. Pay off all the debts that bastard left behind, and from then on we go our separate ways, no longer having anything to do with each other. I saw her nervously clutching the hem of her shirt again. I let out a self-deprecating smile, turned around and walked straight toward the bedroom, thinking she's so afraid of me, she probably won't even dare to invite me to her wedding in the future. That! Her voice rang out from behind again. At this point, I was both tired and hungry, so I snapped without even turning my head. Did you go out and fight with people again? Don't hit you. There was silence for 3 whole seconds behind me. Then I heard her weak defense. I didn't mean that. I interrupted irritably. Just what? Listen carefully. I don't care what you think. Once you finish university and earn 1,000,000 yuan to pay me back, then let's never see each other again in this life. Having said that, I continued walking. But right then, Ya Qingyan suddenly mustered all her courage and rushed over, grabbing the hem of my shirt. I turned my head abruptly. What now? I'm in a very bad mood today. Don't loiter in front of me. I pretended to raise my fist. Is your skin itching because you haven't been beaten in a few days? She instinctively shrank her neck, her whole body trembling, but her fingers clutching my shirt resolutely refused to let go. She kept her head down, her voice as tiny as a mosquito's hum. I just wanted to ask if you've had dinner yet. In that very moment, all my shells and defenses completely crumbled. My mouth hung open, unable to utter a single word. Only one thought remained in my heart. Muga, you really deserve to die. Just my stomach very inconsiderately let out a loud rumble. From the time I ate at 10:30 a.m. until now, I hadn't even had a chance to drink a sip of water. Ya Qingyan said softly, "You must be exhausted. Sit down on the sofa and rest for a bit. Let me go into the kitchen and cook a bowl of noodles for you." I stood rooted into the spot like a statue, staring blankly as she walked into the kitchen, hearing the flickering sound of the gas stove. When I slowly dragged myself to the sofa to sit down, my heart suddenly jumped. Wait! Ya Qingyan's attitude toward me has truly changed completely. Looking at her busy figure in the kitchen, my mind was filled with memories of bestial behaviors from months ago. Those were memories left behind by the original owner. Late one night a few months ago, I was dead drunk, using alcohol as an excuse to frantically smash Ya Qingyan's door, my mouth constantly spewing malicious threats. For every minute it takes me to get in, I'll punch you one more time. How long do you think this rotten door can stop me? With a creaking sound, the door opened, and I grabbed her like a little chick, calling her a jinx, a useless waste of food, and even having foul and disgusting thoughts. The original owner approached her with a cold laugh. Since you'll be a bargain for someone else sooner or later, you might as well serve me first. Even though she was clutching a pair of scissors in her hand, I wasn't the least bit afraid, raising my hand to deliver a thunderous slap, beating her until her face was swollen and blood was streaming down. Even more heartlessly, I pulled out the power plug, using that cold electric cord to lash her thin body over and over again. Her tragic screams echoed throughout the building until the neighbors knocked on the door warning they'd call the police. Only then did I casually toss aside a clump of hair I had just ripped from her head, cursing as I went back to my room to sleep. And that night, she just curled up on the cold floor, like a fish about to dry up and die, her whole body twitching with every choked sob. Thinking of this, I couldn't help but curse inwardly. Muga, you really weren't human before. Logically speaking, how could such deep-seated hatred vanish so easily? Yet here she was, not only not running away, but staying up late waiting for me to come home, and even wanting to cook noodles for me. The sound of boiling water echoed in the kitchen. I stared at the white steam rising from the pot, my heart rate suddenly accelerating. Did she realize something? Realize that I was no longer that demon. Though slightly anxious this time, I had no intention of running away. In this strange and cold world, less than greater than, I actually began to crave this bit of warmth. Less than greater than, it's piping hot. This is like drinking poison to quench thirst. Less than greater than, knowing full well it's a deadly toxin, but because I'm so thirsty, I still can't help but want to drink it all. I quickly found an excuse to comfort myself. What on earth am I thinking? How could she even imagine something like transmigration? It must be because she knows this trashy brother has changed his ways, so she wants to try to ease the relationship. Right then, a steaming bowl of noodles was brought before me. In the clear broth was plump, soft-boiled, sunny-side-up egg, garnished with some green onions and cilantro. The rich aroma hit me right in the nose. I picked up the chopsticks and took a bite. It tasted surprisingly good. Then Ya Qingyan went back into the kitchen to get a glass and casually opened the refrigerator. What was inside was the bottle of Coca-Cola I had bought. She poured the half-empty bottle into a glass and brought it to me. Although the fizz had long since vanished, but the subtle sweetness sliding down my throat soaked deep into my heart. I quickly finished the noodles, intending to stand up and take over the dishwashing. Unexpectedly, Ya Qingyan had already quickly cleared the dishes away. Looking at her busy figure, I felt a strange sense of warmth in my heart. This girl is so sensible, it's heartbreaking. It truly gave me an illusion of family. After showering and lying in bed, less than greater than, I thought today would end peacefully like this. Less than greater than. Knock, knock, knock. A knock on the door suddenly sounded. My heart skipped a beat. Isn't this progression a bit too fast? To avoid being exposed, I deliberately yanked the door open, putting on a ferocious face and growling. What is it? I'm about to sleep. If it's nothing important and you dare disturb me, watch out or it'll beat you to death. I saw her so frightened her whole body was shaking, her fists clenched tight, her eyes filled with bone-deep fear. But even being that scared, she refused to leave. It took her a few seconds to regain her composure before slowly opening her trembling hand. I was stunned. In her palm was a crumpled blue Band-Aid. Your hand is scratched. Don't let it get wet in the summer. It's easy to get an infection. Her voice was soft and warm. In that moment, my throat felt like it was blocked by something. I looked down at the back of my hand. It was a small wound from a scrape during the fight, something even I hadn't bothered to care about. Because whether in my past life or this one, less than greater than, I had been injured countless times, less than greater than. But no one had ever truly worried about me. Less than greater than.
I even thought that if I died in some corner one day, no one would even care. Cũng chẳng có ai thèm lo ngàng tới. My business is none of your concern. I snatched the band-aid away, my fingertips accidentally touching her warm palm, causing me to avert my eyes in a panic immediately, slamming the door shut with a loud bang. I leaned my back against the door, looking at the cheap band-aid in my hand, my heart filled with regret. Damn it. Was my acting just now a bit too fierce? What if I scared the girl too much? For a moment, I even wanted to rush out and lay all my cards on the table, saying that I wasn't that beastly person. But there was something I didn't know. Ya Qingyan outside the door wasn't scared away at all. She also quietly leaned her head against the door, her lips curling into a faint smile, whispering in her heart. He's such a tsundere, getting so nervous over just a band-aid. His acting skills are truly terrible. Then she slowly brushed her long hair behind her neck, revealing an exquisite and peerless face. In those eyes sparkling with laughter, there wasn't a trace of fear left. Instead, it held a hint of charm as if she understood everything. Who would have thought that the thin, timid girl of everyday life, adorned by those captivating eyes, would grow up to be a stunning beauty capable of overthrowing all living beings? The warm yellow light bulb in the living room sizzled, less than greater than. A moth recklessly lunged into it, less than greater than, making crisp, snapping sounds, less than greater than. The neighbors outside, were still arguing incessantly about their children's education, and dogs were barking one after another. But at this point, I was exhausted, collapsed on the bed, snoring like thunder. Ya Qingyan stared at the tightly closed bedroom door, feeling the warmth still lingering in her palm. Less than greater than. A bit of sweetness suddenly rising in her heart. Mom. Less than greater than. I'll have a beautiful dream tonight. Less than greater than. Won't I? She hugged her glass and whispered softly. Less than greater than. In this moment, she felt her current life was no different from heaven. Early the next morning, Ya Qingyan woke up very early, standing before the mirror putting her long hair into a bun. That was the beauty inherited from her mother, Gu Qingren. So beautiful, it would take one's breath away. Once even causing countless women to curse her in jealousy. But as soon as she heard movement from my room, she immediately let her hair down, hiding that beautiful face that could cause calamity for the world. I rubbed my eyes and walked out of the room, prominent blue band-aid on my hand, making Ya Qingyan lower her head and chuckle. I deliberately kept a stern face as I sat down, my tone still stiff, but with several degrees less than the usual ferocity. Bring that book over here when you're done studying. I want to check your progress. Ya Qingyan obediently brought the book over, her clear voice echoing throughout the house. The patterned lute for no reason has 50 strings. Each string and each fret brings back a youthful year. Master Zhuang was confused by his morning dream of a butterfly, less than greater than. Emperor Wang's spring heart was entrusted to the cuckoo, less than greater than. Hearing these lines, my whole body shuddered. Zhuangzhou's butterfly dream. Was it Zhuangzhou becoming a butterfly, or was a soul from another world like me dreaming of Muji's life? The sense of being torn as reality and illusion intertwined immediately made my scalp go numb. I shook my head vigorously, trying to dispel that absurd thought. But seeing her lips move slightly, listening to that voice as round as jade, I unconsciously became enchanted. It's so beautiful. I really wanted her to keep reading like that forever. Just as that thought flickered in my heart, I immediately cursed myself. Muge, you really are a pervert. I coughed twice to clear the embarrassment, my eyes glancing at the textbook in her hand, my eyebrows suddenly furrowing. You're only in 10th grade. Where did this 11th grade book come from? Ya Qingyan answered in a small voice, explaining that the school teaches very fast, and the entire curriculum must be completed by the end of 11th grade. Just be completed by the end of 11th grade. My heart tightened, calculating it. This girl hadn't gone to school for 4 months straight. It's summer break now. Other kids are buried in extra classes. But what about her knowledge gaps? Who would believe that I bought enough meat and vegetables for 3 days, less than greater than, only for this one girl to finish it all by herself? Less than greater than. Looking at the empty refrigerator, less than greater than. I was stunned for a moment. At this time, Ya Qingyan was hanging her head low, her fingers frantically clutching the tattered hem of her shirt, less than greater than, only wishing she could find a hole to crawl into. Less than greater than. It's over, I've been caught being a glutton. Less than greater than. It's so embarrassing. Hearing the grievance in her heart, I suddenly snapped out of it. Far from being angry, I felt extremely pained. This poor girl had been malnourished for a long time, and she's at the age of growing. How hungry must she have been to eat this much? I looked down and calculated the 3,000 yuan I just received, deciding to withdraw 1,000 yuan first, not just to buy meat for her nourishment, but also to get her some decent clothes. And while I'm at it, buy a cheap phone. No matter how hard it is, I can't let the child suffer. No matter how poor we are, education can't be neglected. Even if I have to start delivering goods or doing backbreaking work tomorrow, less than greater than.
I must let this girl live like a normal person. Less than greater. Hurry up and pack your things. Less than greater than. We're going to the market to buy food later. You're coming to help me carry things. I tried to sound cold, but in truth, I already had a plan. Ya Qingjian obediently complied, her small figure bustling around the house, making me suddenly feel the responsibility of a father. When she walked out of the room, my eyebrows furrowed again. In this scorching summer heat, she was still wearing that same old grayish outfit. Not only was the style outdated, but it looked no different from a pile of rags picked up from somewhere. The midday sun was extremely fierce, the sound of cicadas making one's heart feel even more restless. But looking at her timid appearance, I had only one thought, less than greater than. Today I must take her to change her life, less than greater than. Who would have thought that the girl who was always disheveled, less than greater than. Looking as timid as a punching bag, less than greater than. The moment she tied her hair up would be as radiant as a young lady stepped out of a storybook. Initially, I was just annoyed that she kept hiding herself, making trying on clothes inconvenient, so I blurted out, "As a girl, you're always so disheveled. How does that look?" As a result, when she obediently stepped out of the room, my whole body froze. The face that had been hidden behind strands of hair for many years, the elegant forehead, the high straight nose, a beauty so pure yet extremely alluring that one wouldn't dare look directly into her eyes. Unexpectedly, immediately after, she pulled 5 coins out of her pocket, carefully spreading them in her palm. "I'm sorry, I hid some money before. It's only 5 yuan, but it's enough to buy some more green vegetables." Hearing that, my heart felt a sharp pang of pain. This isn't just 5 coins. This is clearly this poor girl's entire fortune. I let out a cold snort and snatched those coins. An extra 5 yuan can indeed buy a lot more vegetables. However, the direction I led her was not the vegetable market at all, the old street lined with fashion boutiques. The midday sun was scorching, making the asphalt road look like it was about to smoke. Na Qingyin struggled through the intense heat, following behind me in a daze. As we passed by a women's clothing store, I suddenly grabbed her wrist